Fengzi led me to my room at the farm. Along the way, he told me this was the biggest farm around here. They raise cattle and pigs, and many workers and educated youth like him live here. Asked why they needed me, when such a big place should have its own vet. He said their vet broke his leg falling on the mountain and was still in the hospital. Then I noticed some people carrying cow dung toward us. One had a limp, and another had white hair. I hadn't seen my maternal grandfather's family in years, but somehow I just knew it was them. Fengzi stepped in front of me to block my view, saying those people lived in the cow shed and I should keep my distance. I pretended to be interested in the cow dung, saying its shape and color could tell me about the cow's health. Fengzi believed me and even called them over. The old man with white hair saw me and his hands started shaking. I looked just like my mother. He kept his head down, probably afraid that if I recognized him, it would cause trouble for me. I pretended to examine the dung carefully, while sneaking glances at them. Then I casually told Fengzi to just call me Su Niannian instead of Dr. Su. When I said my name, I saw the old man's fingers tremble. Now I was sure that was my grandfather. I told them they could go, acting like nothing happened. We kept walking. I saw some rundown mud huts near the cattle area. Fengzi said that's where those people slept. My heart felt heavy. He showed me to a nice guest room meant for visiting officials. After he left, I checked the time. Only 10 o'clock. I left a note for him, grabbed my basket, and headed for the mountains to gather herbs and find a good hiding spot for supplies I'd prepared for my family. The mountain looked close but took over 30 minutes to reach. I found some wild peaches, dates, and herbs along the way. Then I spotted a stream, and as I walked near a big tree, my wrists started feeling warm. That meant something was buried here. I got so excited. I dug with a shovel and found a sealed metal box. I put it in my basket hidden under the herbs. Then I swapped it with a wooden box I'd prepared for my grandfather's family and buried that in the same spot. I covered everything with leaves so it looked untouched and marked the tree. Feeling happy about my lucky find, I headed back down the mountain. But halfway down, I heard rustling sounds around me. I froze. Not another wild boar? I looked around and saw nothing at first. Then, right in front of me in the thick green bushes, I saw a pair of red eyes staring straight at me. Fear swallowed me whole. I couldn't even speak. My feet felt rooted to the ground. The thing staring at me had a pointy head, green body, triangle-shaped face, and a red flickering tongue. It was a snake, just sitting on a tree branch, watching me calmly. I'm terrified of snakes. It's a deep, bone-level fear. This one was a bamboo pit viper, extremely venomous. One bite, and I'd be dead. I let out a short scream, and when the snake flicked its tail, I froze completely. I even forgot I had my pocket dimension to escape into. I squeezed my eyes shut. Then I heard loud footsteps crunching through the leaves. Just as I opened my eyes to escape into my space, a figure rushed past me, grabbed the snake lightning fast right at its weak spot, and killed it. All the strength left my body, and I collapsed to the ground. The person turned around. It was Lu Huijin, my so-called husband. I couldn't believe it. He said he was here on a mission. I knew better than to ask more. Their missions are secret, and I have my own secrets to protect. He told me not to come to the mountains alone, and to at least bring snake-repelling powder next time. Then he reached out his hand to help me up, but those hands had just crushed a snake. I couldn't bring myself to touch them. I tried scrambling up on my own, but the ground was soft and slippery from recent rain. I grabbed at his leg to steady myself, but only caught his pants. Right up. The sound of tearing fabric echoed through the quiet forest. He'd been wearing old borrowed pants, and they just couldn't handle it. I stared, mortified. Even though he's technically my fiancé, I wanted to disappear to another planet. I didn't mean to do that, I stammered. He just pulled me up with his arm and said, "I'll walk you down the mountain." When he lifted me, I noticed his ears turned a little red, but he kept his voice perfectly calm. He picked up my basket and asked if I'd been gathering herbs. I nodded quickly and changed the subject, telling him I'd prepared some things for him. Meat sauce and pork jerky that I'd been planning to mail. He asked when I was heading back to Qingshan. I said tomorrow afternoon. He offered to escort me back then. After a few steps, I realized I'd twisted my ankle. He frowned and said my foot would swell badly at this rate, then offered to carry me on his back. I agreed. Being on his back felt strangely warm, like sitting on a little furnace. I glanced up at the thick tree's shade overhead. It wasn't that hot out. Must be a soldier thing, I figured. At the foot of the mountain, I told him I could manage the rest myself. He wiped the sweat from his forehead, said my ankle should be fine for walking, and disappeared back into the forest, with a rip in his pants. I felt so guilty watching him go. I decided to add an extra jar of meat sauce to his care package. When I got back to my room, Fengzi was waiting at the door, worried. He'd come to call me for lunch, found my note, and brought food back for me. The farm leader apparently thought I was so dedicated that I'd skipped lunch to work. He had no idea I'd been up on the mountain tearing my husband's pants. Back in my room, I found the food Fengzi had brought. I told him I'd eat, wash up, and then go check on the pigs. He offered to wait for me at the pig pen, and I agreed to meet him there. Once he left, I locked the door, slipped into my pocket dimension, took a bath, and ate some fruit. I thought about Lu Huijin. It had been so long since I'd seen him that I'd almost forgotten what he looked like. Well, honestly, his face is pretty hard to forget. I headed out early, before work hours, deliberately walking past the cow shed area. If anyone saw me, I could just say I was checking on the cattle. Near the shed, I spotted the man with the limp from this morning. My heart trembled. That had to be my second uncle. He must have recognized me earlier and was waiting here on purpose. I walked up and introduced myself as the technical advisor, asking him to show me the cow shed. Inside, once I made sure no one was around, I called him second uncle. He looked conflicted but nodded stiffly. I understood. He didn't want to drag me into trouble. Asked him to take me to my grandfather's room. Thankfully, the whole family shared one shed, so we'd have privacy. The moment I stepped inside, I started unpacking my basket. I'd brought over a dozen big meat buns and 10 white steamed buns, all made with ingredients from my space. Then medicine pills in a wooden box. I used wood instead of fancy jade bottles because if someone searched them, expensive containers would only make things worse. I also brought mushroom sauce and meat sauce. My grandparents' eyes were already red with tears. There was also a thin, dark-skinned boy around 10, probably my second uncle's son. I kept it brief. I told them to eat the meat buns quickly before they spoiled, to take 1 pill a day for their health, and to be careful about the smell of the meat sauce. I'd also hidden supplies up on the mountain, biscuits, more sauce, white rabbit candies, and I handed my second uncle a map I'd drawn showing exactly where to find them. I warned him about snakes and gave him a small bottle of liquid to repel them. My grandfather asked worriedly if I'd run into a snake up there. I shook my head quickly. I checked my watch. People would be coming out soon. I told them I had to go but would come back when I could. I left them some mugwort to burn after eating, so the food smell wouldn't give them away. My grandmother's eyes were unfocused, but she'd heard everything. Her eyes were red and wet, though she stayed silent, afraid of causing me trouble. I reminded them one more time. Take the pills 1 a day. Then I walked out. The whole visit lasted just a few minutes. After I left, my grandfather told everyone never to speak of this to anyone. He looked at his grandson, the boy Lin Qingshan, who nodded quietly. Years of hardship had already taught him to keep silent. My grandfather wouldn't gamble with my safety. 1 slip, 1 report, and it wouldn't just be them who suffered. It would be me too. But even so, none of them could take their eyes off those meat buns. Wrapped in oil paper, the grease already soaking through the soft white dough. They each took one and bit in. The rich meat flavor filled their mouths instantly, thick filling with corn that balanced out the richness. My grandfather started crying as he ate, thinking of my mother. If she could see that I'd grown up like this, she'd be relieved. They all cried. Little Qingshan didn't remember me well, but after years of people mocking his fallen family, this small act of kindness meant the world to him. He could already imagine how good that meat sauce would taste. After I left my grandfather's place, I hurried to the pig pen, where Fengzi was waiting. He told me the pigs had eaten and fallen asleep again. I explained that was normal, they needed rest to recover. He was impressed because they'd already stopped having diarrhea after just one treatment. That morning he doubted me because of how young I looked, but now he was a believer. He asked if I could stay overnight since the leaders wanted to make sure the pigs were fully better. I worried about my village, not knowing where I was, but he said someone from my village worked at the farm and could pass along a message. I agreed. I made up another batch of herbal medicine for the pigs, then went back to my room and napped. When I woke up, it was nearly dark and Fengzi was knocking. Dinner was ready. On the way to the cafeteria, he mentioned he was single and ate at the cafeteria every day. I could tell he was showing off a little, but he wasn't being inappropriate, so I didn't mention my fiancé. Near the cafeteria, I saw a group of people in ragged clothes coming out with hard black flour buns. My grandfather's family was among them, heads down. They weren't allowed to eat inside. They had to take their food back to their shed. I asked a couple of casual questions, but stopped myself from prying too much. Drawing attention would be dangerous. The leaders had prepared a real feast for me. Chicken stew with potatoes, braised pork, for dishes, and a soup. They were clearly grateful for my help. Meanwhile, back at the shed, my family chewed their rock-hard buns. Little Qingshan asked his father why they weren't eating the meat buns from earlier. My second uncle pointed at the sky. They'd eat when it was fully dark, when everyone else was asleep. If the smell drifted out or someone walked in, it could lead to a report, and that would be a disaster. Qingshan asked if he could at least skip his black bun to save room. His father told him the bun wouldn't fill him up anyway, but he could save it for tomorrow. The boy put it down immediately. Once it was completely dark and everyone nearby was asleep, the family crouched in the darkness and divided the buns, 3 each. Grandmother thought 3 big meat buns were too many for her and gave one to her son. They ate in silence, savoring every bite. It was the fullest their stomachs had been in years. The warmth spread from their bellies right into their hearts. The next day at noon, I visited them one last time. I brought a big cloth bundle and told them to hold on. In a few years, things would change. I also told them I was engaged to Lu Huijin, so they wouldn't worry about me. I reminded my second uncle to go get the supplies I'd hidden on the mountain. After I left, they opened the bundle and found 20 big red apples and some oranges. The smell of fresh fruit hit them immediately. Qingshan's mouth was watering. Grandfather gave him an orange and put the rest away. Fruit could be eaten slowly. After 2 days at the farm, the pigs were fully recovered. The leaders paid me with grain tickets and money, and even tried to recruit me. I told them I'd be leaving soon to join my husband in the military. The leader was thrilled to learn I was a military wife and offered me a special part-time arrangement. Fengzi blurted out asking if I was married. I told him I had a fiancé. The leaders gave him a look, and he awkwardly backed off. I agreed to come work at the farm every Sunday and Monday. When it was time to leave, the leader wanted Fengzi to drive me back by ox cart, but I told them someone from my village was already waiting to take me home. Sure enough, Lu Huijin was standing on the dirt road in the distance. I had no idea where he'd gotten a brand new bicycle. He was also wearing new clothes and standing there in the warm afternoon light, he looked like a movie star. I caught myself staring. He took my basket, hung it on the handlebars, and told me to get on. I hopped onto the back seat of his big, 28-style bike. I wanted to hold onto his waist but felt too shy, so I just gripped the seat with both hands underneath me. He rode steadily, but the road was full of bumps and potholes. By the time we were near the village, my hands had red marks from gripping so hard, and my backside felt like it was splitting into 6 pieces. So much for the romantic bicycle rides I'd read about in novels. No wonder people say they'd rather cry in a BMW than laugh on a bicycle. As we approached the village entrance, I remembered the gossipy old ladies who always sat there. I tugged his sleeve and told him to let me off so people wouldn't talk. He stopped suddenly, and I slammed face first into his back. My nose turned red, and my eyes filled with tears. He turned around, saw me teary-eyed, and apologized. It was his first time giving a girl a ride. His voice went soft, and he asked if I needed a moment. I fanned my eyes to keep the tears from falling, and told him to keep walking. We walked through the village entrance together. The old ladies went dead silent when they saw this tall, handsome stranger with me, then erupted into gossip the moment we passed. Was that Niannian? Who's that man? Isn't her fiancé a soldier? Why isn't he in uniform? And why were her eyes red? Was she being bullied? We stopped at the village chief's house, but nobody was home yet. Lu Huijin handed me some meat and malted milk powder he'd bought. I was surprised. I didn't expect him to buy me gifts. Then he pushed the bicycle toward me and said, "The bicycle is for you too. It's something I should prepare for the wedding." I blinked. But when I leave, I can't really take a bicycle with me. This was one of the 3 big items, a serious wedding gift in this era. Lu Huijin said he'd arrange for someone to ship the bicycle to me later. I asked if he wanted to come inside, and he hesitated. We weren't married yet, so he worried it might look bad for me. I told him it was fine since villagers came to see me for medical visits all the time. He came along but still stopped at the doorway. I thought that showed good manners. I quickly grabbed some things from my space, 5 pears, meat sauce, and pork jerky, and packed them into the basket for him. I asked how long he'd be staying. Then I caught myself, worried it might be a military secret. He said it was okay, he'd be leaving tomorrow morning. I introduced everything in the basket. A big jar of meat sauce for himself, smaller ones to share, and pears for the train ride. Then he smiled and asked if I wasn't going to invite him for a meal. I panicked a little, worried I'd sounded like I was rushing him out. He said it was fine to stay. Sure enough, by then the village gossip machine was already running full speed. The old ladies had spread the news everywhere. Su Niannian brought home a man and a bicycle. Shen Tingting seized the chance to stir things up, pretending to let it slip that I only dated men for their money, that the military officer was paying for everything, and now I'd found someone new. Gao Jialong heard this and figured if I just liked money, he had a shot. Song Qianjin decided I was shallow. Song Lao Sen wanted to storm home, but his uncle stopped him. He had no claim on me. Inside the village chief's house, I handed Lu Huijin the basket and told him I'd cook for him. He followed me into the kitchen asking how he could help. I gave him 2 pounds of meat to chop while I went to the garden for tomatoes, green beans, potatoes, eggplant, and greens. I also pulled out cabbage and glass noodles from my space to make stuffed buns. He chopped the meat quickly. I started on the dishes, braised pork, minced pork with eggplant, potato stew, while he crouched by the stove feeding the fire. His tall frame looked almost comical squeezed beside the stove, firelight softening his usually stern face. I told him to go out, but he stayed. Once the slow-cooking dishes were simmering, I started making buns. My hands moved fast from my past life experience working at a bun shop. Each one came out perfectly round and evenly sized. He watched, fascinated. He'd joined the army young and his mother never made buns at home, so this was all new to him. He quietly asked how I could make them so well when supposedly I never did housework at home. I paused, then said, "You know, Su Xiaohong is my stepmother. Any credit for being good at housework would obviously go to her own daughter, not me." Then I changed the subject. "Eat as much as you want. I bought the flour with your money anyway, so don't be shy." While I was cooking, Lu Huijin asked gently about my grandfather's situation. He'd figured out that's why I came to the countryside. He'd recognized my grandfather's family at the farm. He handed me a piece of paper with a contact name, telling me to reach out if I ever needed help. I tucked it away, grateful but determined not to use it unless absolutely necessary. I made 50 buns from 2 pounds of pork and cooked up braised pork, potato stew, and minced pork with eggplant. The buns came out fat and round, oil glistening through the skin. Lu Huijin helped set up the table in the yard. When the work bell rang, the village chief's family rushed home, with a whole crowd of nosy people trailing behind them. Gooden ran in first, saw the tall stranger, and shouted, "Who are you?" I poked my head out of the kitchen and said he was my boyfriend. Gooden immediately called him brother-in-law. Then Wang Dama pushed her way to the front. She'd heard gossip all afternoon that I'd brought home a new man, and she was convinced I was cheating on my military fiancé. She grabbed Lu Huijin's sleeve and tried dragging him outside, announcing to everyone that this was my new boyfriend. She shouted that I was a gold digger who'd spent my fiancé's money and now found someone else. A military wife caught cheating could be sent to a labor farm with her head shaved, she said, and she seemed to relish the idea. The crowd grew. Some people defended me, saying I'd always been decent. Others pointed out I hadn't come home last night. The rumors got wilder by the second. Lu Huijin looked at the village chief and said calmly, "I asked Uncle Chongwei to help look after my fiancé here." "I'm Lu Huijin." The village chief smacked his forehead. Of course, he recognized the name. Embarrassed by the scene, he yelled at the crowd, "Stop it, all of you. This is her actual fiancé. He's a regiment commander. Go home." Wang Dama's jaw dropped. She accused the chief of lying to protect me. He snapped back that she was asking for trouble. I stepped forward and said coolly, "Since Wang Dama has such a big problem with me, and apparently so do some of you, maybe there's no point in me staying in this village." The villagers started begging me not to leave. "Just treat what she said like a fart. Let it pass and forget it," one shouted. I smiled and said I hold grudges, and I'd feel dirty even treating someone like Wang Dama as a patient. Lu Huijin rolled up his sleeves, showing his muscular arms, and told Wang Dama coldly that her baseless accusations could drive an innocent woman to death in this era. He said insulting a soldier and a military wife was a crime worth reporting to the police station. Then he pulled out a rope and tied her up before anyone could blink, faster than she could tie corn stalks. She collapsed to the ground, finally terrified. After tying her up, he calmly told everyone to eat dinner first. He wasn't about to let some troublemaker ruin the meal I'd worked so hard on. Song Laosen quietly sized up Lu Huijin while eating and admitted to himself he couldn't compete. Not even close. Meanwhile, Wang Dama sat tied up outside, stomach growling, drooling at the smell of our food. The village chief stuffed a rag in her mouth and told her to spend the time thinking about how to apologize to me. After dinner, the family cleaned up to give us some privacy. Lu Huijin followed me to my room but left the door open. He offered to take me back to the military base early, find me a place to live nearby, and sort out the paperwork. I shook my head. I'd only been in this world for half a month and was already exhausted. I didn't want him spending favors on my behalf when I already owed him so much. I went to the kitchen to pack food for his train ride, 5 meat buns wrapped in brown paper, plus all the flaky sesame pastries I'd made. I'd secretly counted during dinner. He ate 10 buns in one sitting. So the man had a big appetite. The pastries with meat sauce would make a good train meal. When I turned around, he was standing in the doorway watching me pack. Our eyes met, and I felt my face flush. "Here, take this. If you get hungry on the way back, eat a bun to tide you over." He reached for the bundle, and our fingertips accidentally touched. I pulled my hand back quickly. The package was heavy and still warm. He said quietly, "Thank you." Something shifted in his expression, like he'd suddenly realized this was real, that we were actually going to be married. He said it felt like someone had gently scratched his heart. Under the dim yellow light, I looked up at Lu Huijin. His throat moved as he swallowed, and said he should get going. I reminded him not to forget the basket of food. He grabbed it, slung it on his back, then hauled Wang Dama up off the ground by her rope, mouth still gagged, and dragged her out of the village chief's house. At the door, he turned and told me to go to bed early. I asked why he wasn't taking the bicycle. "I'm leaving it for you," he said. Before he walked away, I stopped him and pressed a small jade bottle into his hand, emergency medicine I'd made from the best ingredients in my space: snow lotus, ginseng, spirit spring water. If anything happened to him on the battlefield, one pill could boost his strength. The novel never mentioned him getting hurt, but I was a butterfly in this story now, and who knew what changes I might cause. He smiled down at me and stuffed a wad of money into my hand, every last cent he had on him. I waved goodbye, went inside, shut the door, and leaned against it, pressing my hand to my chest. That smile of his was really something. He was exactly my type. So, I guess I do have feelings after all. Meanwhile, I didn't know that back at the educated youth quarters, a woman named Gu Jia was lying in bed scheming. She'd seen Lu Huijin and immediately wanted him for herself. Her plan was to get me ruined or married off to a local, then swoop in to comfort him when he came looking for me. She was getting anxious because she'd heard I might leave the village soon. Lu Huijin took Wang Dama straight to the police station and called the chief of police, who rushed over. When he heard what happened, the chief slammed his fist on the table and promised to make an example of her. Lu Huijin gave him a jar of my meat sauce as thanks. My fiancé made it. The next morning, Lu Huijin and his comrade Zhang Liang boarded a train. He pulled out the meat buns I'd packed. Zhang Liang's eyes flew open. Where'd you get those? They don't look store-bought. Your sister-in-law made them, Lu Huijin said casually. Zhang Liang nearly choked. Sister-in-law? You went to see her without telling me? Lu Huijin gave him a look, and Zhang Liang quickly shut up. Nothing, just saying these buns smell amazing. Then Lu Huijin pulled out the flaky pastries and meat sauce. He scooped some sauce into a pastry, his first time trying them together. They were delicious. The pastries were still soft even after a whole night. Zhang Liang watched with puppy eyes until Lu Huijin told him to help himself. He grabbed 6 or 7 pastries, copying his boss's technique of stuffing sauce inside. Everyone in the nearby seats was craning their necks to see, practically drooling. Lucky for us, the 2 soldiers' intimidating presence kept anyone from complaining out loud. Back on the train, Zhang Liang couldn't stop praising my cooking. He asked Lu Huijin if I had any sisters who could cook. Lu Huijin shut him up with one cold look. The next morning, Wang Dama's husband showed up at the village chief's house banging on the door, demanding his wife back. Song Annie told him Wang Dama was at the county police station. He threw a fit, saying it was just a little gossip and didn't deserve that kind of punishment. Song Auntie wasn't having it. She pointed out that none of Wang Dama's family had bothered coming to check on her the night before. Meanwhile, the village gossip had evolved into something ridiculous. First it was that Lu Huijin had clearly made me cry. Then it became, he didn't take me with him, so he must have dumped me. By the end of the workday, the story had turned into a full drama. Military officer finds new love. Su Niannian cries on the spot. Song Annie finally lost it and threw her headscarf on the ground, yelling at everyone that Lu Huijin had left me a bicycle, a whole bicycle, and asked if their husbands would do the same when finding new love. That shut some people up, but the damage was done. I didn't know about any of this. I'd already hung up my sign saying I wouldn't treat villagers anymore. That afternoon, Gooden popped his head into my medicine room and invited me to a secret spot on the mountain where the mulberries were ripe. I was tired of reading, so I sprinkled some snake-repelling powder on both of us and headed up with him. The mulberry trees were loaded with fruit. Gooden scrambled up like a monkey, must be a village kid's superpower, and handed me branches heavy with berries. We sat on rocks eating them, sweet juice bursting in our mouths. He looked up at me with his little face and asked, "Are you happier now, pretty sister?" I smiled and asked if he wanted me to make jam. I secretly tossed a mulberry into my pocket dimension to grow there. We picked extra berries for jam and headed down. It was my most relaxing day since arriving in this world. At the mountain base, Gooden ran into his friend Nuno, who immediately noticed his purple-stained mouth and got mad about being left out of the mulberry mission. The 2 boys chased each other home. I was walking down alone when I saw a man in clean white clothes with a blank expression and drool running from his mouth. He started following me, chanting, "Pretty wife, good wife, wife with braids." I quickly twisted my braid into a bun. I didn't mean him any harm. He was clearly mentally disabled, and someone was taking care of him based on his clean clothes, but he kept getting closer. I looked around. Strangely, not a single person was working in the nearby fields. He kept coming, mumbling something obscene. I had no choice but to pull out my electric stun stick. "Can you understand me? Stay away." When I heard what that fool was mumbling, I nearly threw up. I zapped him with my stun stick immediately. He screamed and fell to the ground. I kicked him and warned him I'd do worse if he said anything like that again. Then I ran, not wanting to stick around in case he recovered. Back at the village chief's house, Gooden had already started washing the mulberries. I changed clothes and we made jam together. The sweet smell filling the kitchen lifted my mood completely. During dinner, there was a commotion outside. Old Joe's wife barged into the yard dragging her fool son behind her. She looked at our dinner table and licked her lips. Then she announced she was here to propose marriage. Her son, Jingue, wanted to marry me. I nearly spat out my food. Her son was the village fool, born with brain damage, about the intelligence of a 7-year-old. He started shouting that I was his wife, and we'd already been together. Song Laosan jumped up and slapped him across the face, telling him to watch his mouth. I stood up calmly and pointed at the fool, then corrected myself. No point talking to him, and addressed his mother instead. She insisted her son was just, simple, and would make a loyal husband. A crowd gathered outside to watch the show. I looked at old Joe's wife and asked her how she even knew it was me her son was talking about. Could he say my name? She said I was the only woman in the village who wore a white shirt, and she'd checked with people before coming. Then she acted generous. I know unmarried girls are thin-skinned. Don't worry, I'll give you a proper wedding. We won't even hold your military officer X against you. Just pack your bags. I laughed in disbelief. Lady, who are you to come here spouting this nonsense? And my military officer brother, you think it's your place to not hold it against me? Song Auntie had heard enough. She wheeled out the brand new Phoenix bicycle Lu Huijin had given me and held up the watch on my wrist. See this? A bicycle from Commander Lu. A watch from Commander Lu. Don't even get me started on the other wedding gifts. What does your Jingui have to compare? The crowd was stunned. Now, everyone finally believed I hadn't been dumped. They started buzzing about the Phoenix bicycle. The village only had one second-hand one. And the shiny watch, and how Lu Huijin's family was supposedly well off too. Someone said, even with my eyes closed I'd know which one to pick. Poor handsome officer, though, standing in the crowd, Gu Jia watched it all with dark, scheming eyes. In the crowd, Gu Jia was watching and scheming. She figured I was just some poor girl who'd seduced a rich military officer, and she believed she was a much better match for Lu Huijin. Equal family status, a perfect pair. Old Joe's wife kept insisting her fool son had already been intimate with me, so I was obligated to marry him. She even claimed first-come first-served rights over my military fiancé. The village chief tried to reason with her, but she wouldn't budge. I said 2 words. Call the police. The village chief hesitated. A police report would ruin the village's performance record for the year. But he knew if something really happened to me here, he'd be in serious trouble. He told Song Laosan to go to town. I handed Song Laosan my bicycle and quietly slipped him the paper Lu Huijin had given me with his contact's name. He pedaled off so fast the wheels nearly sparked. Old Joe's wife panicked when she realized I'd actually called the police. She threw herself on the ground, wailing and calling me a little hussy, saying her good intentions were being trampled. The village chief warned her to stop, but she taunted him. Hit me then, I'm not leaving. I walked over and looked down at her. She stuck her face out, confident no young girl would dare hit her. The next second, I slapped her with everything I had. The whole yard went dead silent. Your face is really thick, I said, shaking out my stinging hand. Her fool son tried to charge at me, but the village chief held him back, and realized just how strong this fool really was. A normal woman wouldn't have stood a chance against him. That thought darkened his face. Old Joe's wife started screaming, so I grabbed her chin and dislocated her jaw. She could only make muffled sounds after that. Too noisy. Quiet down, I said. Then I told the village chief we should finish our dinner before the food got cold. He tied the fool to a tree. The family looked at me with new respect. The chief asked how I knew how to dislocate a jaw. Traditional Chinese medicine covers a bit of everything, I said. Before long, we heard children shouting. A car was coming. Villagers chased after it like it was a parade. Song Laosan stepped out first, followed by 2 men in crisp military green uniforms who were clearly important. The village chief rushed to greet them and explained everything. Old Joe's wife, still lying on the ground with her jaw hanging open, saw those uniformed officials and nearly fainted from terror. Old Joe's wife couldn't understand why the police were treating her worse than Wang Dama. She begged and pleaded, then threw herself on the ground screaming that the police were beating her. Nobody in the crowd dared speak up. When that didn't work, she stood up and started calling me horrible names again, claiming I was used goods that her son had already ruined. She even asked the crowd if they wanted to have a go at me too. I walked over calmly and pressed a silver needle into a pressure point on her back. She curled up like a shrimp, shaking and sweating from the pain but unable to scream. Then I spoke up. I pointed out that Zhou Jingui was a fool who shouldn't know those vulgar words. Someone must have taught him. And whoever did it was targeting me specifically because I'm a military wife, trying to stir up trouble. Villagers backed me up, saying Jingui had never bothered women before. He used to just pick fruit outside. The village chief, embarrassed that this happened right after Lu Huijin left, told the police to investigate thoroughly. I agreed, saying the village was normally decent and someone was clearly pulling strings behind the scenes. Under pressure, old Zhou's wife cracked. She admitted she got the idea from a female educated youth who'd once talked about how village women who got touched by local men had to marry them. That conversation gave her the idea to teach her son to grab at pretty girls. She'd heard I went up the mountain alone that afternoon and thought I was easy prey since rumors said I'd been dumped. But now she needed a scapegoat. A female educated youth told me, she insisted. The officer dragged her through the crowd to identify the person. The village chief even brought oil lamps so she could see everyone's faces clearly. Old Zhou's wife stared at the educated youth group and finally pointed at two people, Shin Tingting and Gu Jia. She wasn't sure which one, so she accused them both. Take them all, the officer ordered. Both women protested, but he promised to drive them back in the car if they were innocent. Gu Jia kept a calm face, while Shin Tingting panicked openly. Everyone noticed the difference. Gu Jia silently cursed old Zhou's wife for being an idiot who dragged her into this mess. She decided to say nothing once they reached the station. The crowd dispersed and the village went quiet again. Meanwhile on the train, Zhang Liang had been raving about my cooking all day, the pastries, meat sauce, and pork jerky. The other passengers glared enviously, chewing their dry hard buns with nothing but their own saliva to wash them down. Lu Huijin watched them and remembered that used to be him too, just dry buns and hot water on every train ride. Something had changed. Early the next morning, Song Xiaohong showed up at the village chief's door with her little daughter, face swollen and crying. Song Auntie was furious. Her daughter's husband Yang Shu had beaten her again. Xiaohong explained through tears that she'd gotten pregnant after going home, but then started bleeding badly and lost the baby. Her mother-in-law called her a hen that can't lay eggs, and Yang Shu beat her out of shame. I overheard everything from the yard. Based on what I knew, the problem was most likely with the husband, weak sperm. When Song Annie asked me to examine Xiaohong, I told her the issue probably wasn't with her daughter. Song Auntie's first instinct was disbelief, but then she remembered a village woman who couldn't get pregnant for years, divorced, remarried, and conceived right away, while her ex-husband's new wife still had no children. I checked Xiaohong's pulse. She was weaker than before and needed serious bed rest. A few more miscarriages and her body would be ruined. I wrote a prescription and Song Auntie went to brew the medicine. The village chief was livid. He grabbed his sons and they all marched to Yangshu's village with weapons to sort things out. I had my own plans for the day. I needed to go to the county to pick up the bicycle Song Lao San had left at the police station. On the tractor ride over, the village women kept staring at me strangely. 2 people had been hauled off to the station because of me, and even though I was the victim, some wondered why trouble always seemed to find me. One woman asked if I was heading to the station and when old Zhou's wife would be released. I shot back, "Want me to take you along? You could keep her company. They still haven't found who was behind it all." She shut up fast after that. At the station, I was taken to Director Wang's office. He greeted me warmly. He and Lu Huijin were old comrades, and he couldn't stop talking about how much his family loved the meat sauce. I'd brought 2 more jars, which he happily accepted. Then his expression turned serious. "Sister-in-law, how well do you know Gu Jia and Shin Tingting?" I barely knew these 2 women. I'd spent a day or 2 on a train with Shin Tingting, and I'd never even spoken to Gu Jia. Director Wang showed me the case file. Shin Tingting had cracked first. She admitted Gu Jia told her about the village fool and how if a man and woman had any physical contact here, they'd be forced to marry. Shin Tingting had deliberately said this near old Zhou's wife while working in the fields. And it was Gu Jia who spread the word that I'd gone up the mountain alone that afternoon. So Gu Jia had orchestrated everything. She was clever. She never did anything directly. just manipulated people's greed and desperation. Director Wong suspected she might even be an enemy agent trying to damage military-civilian relations. I was baffled. I'd never even talked to this woman. I asked to see her. Inside the interrogation room, Gu Jia looked exhausted after a night of questioning. When she saw it was me, hatred filled her eyes. She resented everything about me, my looks, my job, my fiancé. Why does she get it all? Was written across her face. I asked her straight out if she'd planned it. She laughed bitterly and said, "So what if I did? It didn't work. What can they do to me?" Then she added what she'd really wanted, to see me married to that fool, to watch me fall into the mud. I told her she was sick. Then I stood up, pulled out a spiked glove from my bag, put it on, and punched her several times. She hit the floor screaming. Then I took out a bottle of chili pepper extract I'd prepared and splashed it on her. She shrieked like a slaughtered pig, begging for help.
"Stop yelling."
"I'm leaving," I said. The officer strolled in after I was gone. He figured a delicate-looking girl couldn't hit that hard and thought she was faking it. He kicked her lightly and told her to get up for her statement. She screamed again. He just frowned. He hadn't even used any force. His colleague came in, and they agreed she was being dramatic. They dragged her back to her cell. After leaving the station, I went to Master Ji's house for my usual lesson. I brought his family some jars of meat sauce, a mildly spicy version made with pork for my space, good for children and elderly alike. His wife tried to give me something valuable in return, but I refused. The knowledge Master Ge taught me was worth far more than any gift. He tested me on what I'd studied and stroked his beard in surprise. He never expected to find such a talented student at his age. Master Ge was so impressed with my progress that he went to fetch even more thick books for me to study.
My head spun looking at them.
I quickly distracted him with fresh tomatoes, cucumbers, and green beans from my space. It worked. He got so excited about the vegetables that he forgot about piling on more homework. I told him Patience had given me the produce as payment, so it was no big deal. Really, I just wanted to share my space's bounty with him. Maybe it would help him live longer. That was my way of repaying his teaching. I spotted the black market on my way and sold a ginseng root and a lingji mushroom through the same contact as before, getting 70 bills and a box of little goldfish in return. The black market's second-in-command, Yishan, invited me to work with him long-term. I knew from the novel that he'd eventually become the male and female lead's biggest enemy. Perfect. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. I agreed to partner up and even asked if he could do odd jobs for me, like burying supplies at specific mountain locations. He laughed and said yes for a fee. At the police station, the young officer told me the results. Shin Tingting and Wang Dama would parade through the village for a day to publicly apologize to me. Wang Dama would get 1 week of labor reform, Shin Tingting 1 month. If I forgave them, the labor reform could be cancelled. Gu Jia's identity was still being investigated, and old Zhou's wife and her fool son were still being dealt with. I biked back to the village, and the police car actually caught up to me on the road. The village ladies at the entrance saw me arriving with yet another police car and panicked. Are they arresting more people? There'll be nobody left. The village chief was out, so the party's secretary handled things. He took Wang Dama and Shin Tingting to the village loudspeaker and announced that from now on, insulting or spreading rumors about military wives was strictly forbidden. Then he made them each apologize publicly over the speaker. Shin Tingting went first, admitting her jealousy nearly caused a disaster. Wang Dama followed, completely deflated, promising to behave and asking villagers to hold her accountable. Meanwhile, at the military base, Lu Huijin had barely returned before his commanding officer called him in. "Huijin, maybe you should call off this marriage. I'll have your sister-in-law introduce you to someone better." Lu Huijin placed a jar of my meat sauce and some pork jerky on the officer's desk, then asked calmly what the problem was. The officer swallowed hard, eyeing the food, then explained. My political background check had hit a snag. My maternal grandfather's family had been sent to labor reform, which could block Lu Huijin's future promotions. If you were an ordinary soldier, it wouldn't matter, but you're destined for great things. The officer had tried setting him up with all kinds of women before, Pretty ones, curvy ones, educated ones, and Lu Huijin had refused to meet a single one. Back at the military base, Lu Huijin's commanding officer tried to talk him out of marrying me. My political background check had failed because of my grandfather's family being sent to labor reform. The officer genuinely cared about Lu Huijin's career and offered to set him up with someone else. He could finally name his type after years of refusing every match. Lu Huijin reached for the meat sauce and jerky on the desk. "She made these," he said simply. The officer laughed. "Never thought I'd see the day." "But her background check won't pass." Lu Huijin's answer stunned him. He volunteered for a 4S classified mission, the most dangerous kind, saying he'd trade military merit for our marriage. If he came back alive, he wanted my background check cleared. The officer's face went pale. These missions were usually given to soldiers who already had children. He tried to protest, but Lu Huijin stood firm. "This is my responsibility." He even asked for a faster mission since he'd promised me 2 months. The officer threw him a classified file from his drawer. "You'd better come back alive." Lu Huijin saluted. Soldier Lu Huijin, guaranteed to complete the mission. He pushed the food back onto the officer's desk, told him to take care, and left. He went straight to the telegraph office and sent me a message. Background check passed. "Wait for me." At his family quarters, he checked on his brother's 2 boys, little Lu Zhe and Lu Lin. He gave them my pork jerky, which they loved. Lu Zhe asked shyly when his Annie was coming. The boy was scared. Someone had told him that once their uncle's wife arrived and had her own children, they wouldn't be wanted anymore. That night, Lu Huijin studied the mission file and realized just how dangerous it was. He packed the jade medicine bottle I'd given him into his breast pocket. His commanding officer went home and vented to his wife about Lu Huijin's stubbornness. But when the wife opened the jar of meat sauce, she understood everything. No wonder he picked this girl. "You introduced him to all kinds of women but forgot to find one who could cook." The 2 of them fought over the sauce at dinner until there was nothing left but silence and chewing. I didn't know any of this. Back in the village, Wang Dama and Shintingting had been marched around all day apologizing. The village chief asked if I'd forgive them. I said no. They were both sent to labor reform at a farm far from here. Old Joe's wife got 2 years of labor reform. Her fool son got 1 year in prison, and his family would be held responsible for his behavior after release. I'd watched that fool carefully. He wasn't as innocent as people thought. The greed in his eyes when he looked at me was anything but pure stupidity. Things in the village finally settled down, though whispers lingered. People figured if I weren't so pretty, none of this would have happened. Typical. I received Lu Huijin's telegram just as I was packing to start my temporary job at the farm. It said my background check had passed, and to wait for him. Song Xiaohong came to give me a pair of handmade thick-soled shoes she'd sewn for me, thanking me for clearing her name. Here's what had happened with Xiaohong's situation. The village chief had led his sons to Yangshu's village and dragged him out of a field. He slapped him hard and demanded to know how he could beat a woman who'd just had a miscarriage. Yangshu tried to defend himself, saying it was Xiaohong's fault for not being able to carry a baby to term. The neighbors actually sympathized with him. In their minds, not producing a son was a serious failing. Yangshu's mother made it worse, bragging about how tough country women are, basically calling Xiaohong spoiled. Song Laosan stepped up and said what I told the family, that the problem was probably Yangshu's. "Maybe he's the one who can't produce," he said. Blaming the toilet when you can't go, the crowd roared with laughter. Yangshu turned pale and sweaty. He clearly suspected something was wrong with himself, but was terrified of being exposed. The village chief's family dragged him to a well-known local doctor. A whole crowd of nosy villagers tagged along for the show. The old doctor checked his pulse and nailed every symptom: frequent urination, lower back pain, constant fatigue. Then he delivered the verdict. Yangshu's seeds were too poor to grow fruit. With treatment, there might be hope, but as things stood, he couldn't father children. Yangshu exploded, threatening to report the doctor. His mother jumped in, calling everyone uneducated. Song Laosan suggested they just go to another doctor then. If he had nothing to hide, why refuse? Yangshu's father started looking nervous too, wondering if this was hereditary.
Yangshu bolted.
Song Xiaohong's father chased him down and kicked him to the ground, announcing that Xiaohong wanted a divorce. Yang Shu's mother begged them not to split up. After today's humiliation, her son would never find another wife. Yang Shu even knelt before Xiaohong crying, promising to change. But Xiaohong remembered all those lost babies and the pain she'd endured. She refused. She wanted a divorce, period. Song Laosan delivered the final blow. If you don't agree to the divorce, I'll write to the newspaper tomorrow and make your story famous across the whole country. Everyone will be very curious to know who you are. Song Laosan's newspaper threat worked. Yang Shu was terrified of public humiliation and immediately agreed to divorce. The very next day, an old classmate of Xiaohong's, a widower, came to propose. They'd liked each other back in school. She said yes right away. Xiaohong came to thank me before I left. I told her she should thank herself. When Yang Shu came crawling back on his knees, crying and begging, most women would have caved. She didn't. I packed up my things, and the farm's horse cart arrived. Song Auntie helped me load everything and even gave me some fine flour and grass mats, telling me to come back if the farm didn't work out. On the ride over, I watched the corn ripening in the fields and thought about Liu Huijin. I hoped his mission would be safe. Then I checked my pocket dimension and discovered the box of gold bars I'd thrown and had transformed into over 100 ducks, 100 chickens, and 100 rabbits, all in neat little pens. Fluffy yellow and white bundles everywhere. I nearly fainted from happiness. My space pork had already been incredible, tender, no gamey smell, fat that melted without being greasy. Now I had all this meat too. I was already dreaming of beggar's chicken, spicy rabbit, and roast duck. The rabbit fur could even be made into little boots. Wake up, we're here. The old cart driver snapped his whip, and I realized I'd been so lost in my food fantasies that I'd arrived without noticing. After settling in and eating something from my space, I grabbed my basket and walked to the cow shed under the night sky. The mountain breeze was cool and pleasant. My second uncle was already standing outside, watching me approach. Inside, my grandfather told me to visit less often to avoid trouble. I said I understood but wanted to check their health first. They'd been taking the pills daily and had eaten all the fruit and meat buns. Everyone's pulse was much improved. Grandfather said he felt stronger and more energetic. Grandmother could see more clearly now. She'd been living in a fog for years. I gave her a special bottle of pills for her eyes. My second uncle quietly asked where I got so much money. He'd found 100 bills hidden with the supplies I'd buried on the mountain. I made up a story about finding and selling ginseng. Grandfather asked for paper and wrote down an address in the capital, a place where my eldest uncle had stored some things before everything fell apart. Then I told my second uncle something that made him jump to his feet. His leg could be fixed. The bone had healed wrong and would need to be rebroken and reset. It would be painful, but it was possible. He could barely believe it. As a young man stuck with a permanent limp, he'd long given up hope. Now there was a chance. My second uncle clenched his fists and said he was willing to endure the pain of having his leg rebroken. Even 10 times over, he'd do it. I told him we'd wait until after autumn harvest, and he'd need time to recover afterward with no heavy labor. I unpacked my basket, over 20 meat buns and 20 apples hidden under pig grass. I reminded them to eat the buns quickly in the hot weather. I'd be staying at the farm for a month or two, so I could visit more often. I left before it got too late. As I walked away, I could tell my uncle was choked up. For the first time in years, they had something to look forward to. While things were finally looking up for my grandfather's family, my half-sister Su Ruhua was apparently in a desperate mess back in the city. After I'd gotten their family kicked out of the military housing compound, her reputation was ruined. She'd stopped caring about school. Marriage was her only way to stay in the city and avoid being sent to the countryside. She'd been waiting for Heat Songhao to come back from his trip. When he finally returned, she dressed up in her prettiest outfit, put on makeup, and went to find him. He tried to turn her away, saying things were already over between them. But she came prepared. She pulled out 2 bottles of expensive liquor she'd bought with her savings, claiming she just wanted to say a proper goodbye to their relationship. She poured him bowl after bowl, acting heartbroken and noble. Once he was drunk and dizzy, she started getting physical, loosening her collar, sitting in his lap, wrapping her arms around his neck, kissing him. He was completely inexperienced and couldn't resist. He carried her to his bedroom. But right in the middle of things, his mother came home. She opened the front door, saw the liquor bottles, and kicked open the bedroom door. There was her son with Su Ruhua underneath him. His mother's face turned black as ink. She forced herself not to scream. If the neighbors heard, the marriage would be set in stone, which was exactly what Su Ruhua wanted. She coldly ordered them to get up. Hee Tsung-hao noticed a spot of red on the bedsheet, Su Ruhua's first time. His expression darkened. "Mom, please step outside," he said again, more firmly this time. Meanwhile, back in the city, Hee Tsung-hao's mother was furious. She cursed Su Ruhua, calling her every horrible name, saying she had dirty blood, comparing her to a prostitute, and telling her son he must have been starving to eat, something like that. Su Ruhua kept her head down and stayed silent through all of it. She knew that fighting back now would ruin her chance of marrying into this family. She needed to get through the door first, then she could make her moves. Hee Tsung-hao finally told his mother to stop when her insults got too extreme. At that point, she was basically calling him a brothel customer. His mother kicked Su Ruhua out, threw open all the windows, stripped the bedsheets, and scrubbed everything clean. She asked her son directly, "Did she start it?" He thought back and nodded. She had climbed onto him first. That night at dinner, his mother told his father to start looking for a proper girl at work to introduce to their son. She needed to cut off Su Ruhua's path before it was too late. Back at the farm, time flew by. Autumn harvest ended, and things slowed down. Then my second uncle, accidentally, fell and broke his leg, right at the spot where his old fracture had healed wrong. The farm didn't bother treating him, just had someone carry him back to the shed. When I arrived that night, I was honestly impressed. I'd been planning to break his leg myself and reset it, but he'd done the hard part on his own. The man was tough. I cleaned the wound and pulled out my surgical tools. I shoved a clean towel in his mouth. He was drenched in sweat, face red and swollen, but he hadn't made a single sound of pain. I suddenly realized I'd forgotten to give him a painkiller first. After he swallowed it, the pain faded quickly. He said the pill would save countless lives on a battlefield. I applied my special bone healing paste, made from concentrated spirit spring water and medicinal herbs, wrapped his leg in bandages, and splinted it with sterilized bamboo. From the outside, it just looked like a basic field dressing. I handed little Qingshan 2 medicine bottles, red pills for pain, green pills for fever. Then I left them 2 roast chickens and a bag of apples, telling them to eat well while he healed. I'd come back every 2 days. My farm job was easy. Whenever the pigs looked sluggish, I just added spirit spring water to their feed. Under my care, the pigs and cattle were thriving. Before long, some pigs that were only 6 months old started mating and getting pregnant. Unheard of at that age. They were growing big and strong, and now reproducing too. The pigs at the farm were getting pregnant 2 months ahead of schedule thanks to the spirit spring water. I decided to cut back on it before the animals started doing something truly alarming. Summer turned to autumn. Under my care, my grandfather's family had recovered remarkably. My second uncle's leg was fully healed, though he still faked his limp in front of others. Grandmother's eyes were back to normal. She held my hands and said I looked just like my mother when she was young. Grandfather told me I'd done enough for them and should go find my fiancé. I'd already prepared winter quilts for them, and my uncle had dug a hidden cellar under his bed to store everything. I felt a wave of relief, like I'd repaid a debt the original Su Niannian had owed. That same afternoon, a young man delivered a telegram from the capital. My heart sank as I read it. Commander Liu injured. Capital People's Hospital, Special Care Ward 406. This wasn't a small injury. They wouldn't have summoned me for something minor. The wording wasn't even in his voice. He might be unconscious. For a second I wondered if my scummy father had faked this to lure me back, but even he wouldn't spend that kind of money on a trick. I made up my mind in 3 seconds. The farm director gave me travel papers without hesitation. I packed everything into my space, hired a cart to the county, and bought the last available ticket, hard seat. The overnight train clattered through the darkness while I worried. As long as he hadn't lost a limb, I could probably save him. I hoped he'd taken that emergency pill I gave him. 3 days later, I arrived in the capital, unwashed, exhausted, living on pork jerky and apples. I found a guest house near the hospital, showered, napped for 1 hour, changed clothes, and headed straight there. At the fourth-floor nurse's station, I said I was there for room 406. The nurse's eyes went wide. Apparently, Lu Huijin had become quite popular among the nursing staff, tall, handsome, and supposedly single. Every nurse had been volunteering to check his for. When I told her I was his fiancé, she looked stunned. He has a fiancé? After registering and showing my ID, I was let through. A young guard named Wang Jun opened the door and was surprised to see me so soon. They'd only just sent the telegram. He said he'd go fetch water and left me to communicate with the commander. I looked at Lu Huijin lying on the bed, eyes closed, stubble growing on his jaw from days without shaving. Communicate with him? The man was unconscious. How exactly was I supposed to do that? Wang Jun told me Lu Huijin had been in the hospital for 4 or 5 days. He'd had surgery for gunshot wounds on his back and left leg, but for some reason, he still hadn't woken up. I kept my expression calm, and Wang Jun slipped out to give us privacy, stationing himself outside the door. Lu Huijin's face was gaunt, much thinner than before. I pulled his hand from under the blanket to check his pulse. Wang Jun came back with hot water, saw me, lovingly holding Lu Huijin's hand, and immediately retreated again, saying he'd stand guard so nobody would disturb us. Fine by me. With him outside, I could work freely. I poured half a cup of spirit spring water for my space and tried to feed it to the unconscious man. The water kept spilling at his lips. I was sweating with frustration. I considered mouth-to-mouth, but who knew if he'd brushed his teeth in 5 days? Instead, I propped him up, pried open his jaw, poured the water in, and tilted his chin up to make him swallow. Almost immediately, dark impurities started seeping from his skin with a faint smell. I grabbed a basin of warm water and a fresh towel and started wiping him down, carefully avoiding the bandaged areas. This was my first time being this close to a man in either of my lives. Through the gaps in his bandages, I could see his abs, firm but surprisingly soft to the touch. Broad shoulders, narrow waist, the type that looks lean in clothes but muscular without them. My hand slowed down as I reached his lower abdomen. I wondered if he was injured there too. I was just about to check, purely out of medical concern obviously, when I felt someone watching me. He was awake, staring right at me. My toes curled inside my shoes. I yanked my hand back and accidentally hit one of his wounds. His face went pale. You're awake. Does it hurt?
I'm sorry. He stammered.
He looked awkward too, waking up to find his fiancée staring at that area with her hand hovering nearby. He told me to step out and let Wang Jun handle the cleaning. We weren't married yet, and he didn't think it was appropriate. I explained that Wang Jun had sent me the telegram, and I'd rushed straight from the countryside. Lu Huijin frowned, worried I'd traveled alone. He planned to arrange an escort. Just then, a woman's voice came from outside. Let me in. I need to change Commander Lu's bandages. Wang Jun called back extra loudly, probably to warn me in case I was sneaking a kiss, that the four had just been changed and sister-in-law was still inside. The nurse, Wang Mei, came in and froze when she saw me. She'd been expecting a plain village girl, not someone in a fitted yellow dress with a waist half the size of hers. Her confident voice dropped a few notches. She told me to step aside, then got alarmed when I said I'd finish wiping him down first. He's seriously injured. What if he gets infected? Can you take that responsibility? From the bed, Lu Huijin spoke up. It's fine. My fiancé is a doctor. She knows what she's doing. Wang Mei suddenly shrieked, not about me, but because he was awake. She rushed to his bedside, grinning ear to ear. Lu Huijin's eyebrow twitched. Even I hadn't reacted that excitedly. Where was all this enthusiasm coming from? Note: there's no Su Yan in this chapter. Continuing from Su Niannian's perspective as before, with maximum humor as requested. Wang Jun heard the nurse's shriek from outside and burst in, thinking his commander's miraculous revival was somehow my doing. Honestly, the man was unconscious for 5 days, and the nurses were already fighting over his schedule. This era's romance novels write themselves. I politely told Nurse Wang Mei to fetch the doctor in half an hour. She'd introduced herself by name, and I deliberately called her Nurse. Petty? Maybe. But I'd read enough transmigration novels to know exactly what a pretty nurse hovering over an unconscious handsome soldier was plotting. She gave Lu Huijin a syrupy, "Just call me Xiao Mei," before leaving, and I swear I could taste the sugar from across the room. Wang Jun tried to take over the towel from me. I let him, gladly. I told Lu Huijin I'd go make him something to eat since he'd just woken up. The moment I left, Lu Huijin turned on poor Wang Jun with murder eyes. "Who told you to send her that telegram?" Turns out his commanding officer had ordered it, probably hoping I'd see Lu Huijin half dead and run for the hills. Classic test the fiancé move. Lu Huijin was not pleased. Wang Jun, bless his simple soldier heart, tried to smooth things over. "But boss, sister-in-law clearly missed you. She was holding your hand the moment she got here." Lu Huijin turned his head away. What he was actually thinking about? The fact that when he woke up, I'd been staring intensely at his abs. Do women like abs? Then Wang Jun pulled back the blanket, and oh lord, 5 days of unconscious man stench hit him like a brick wall. He almost gagged. Lu Huijin realized I had definitely smelled that too while trying to wipe him down. His face went from hospital pale to tomato red in about 2 seconds. "How many days was I unconscious?" he asked through clenched teeth.
5.
5 days. When we get back, you're running 10 laps around the field. With a 10-kilo pack. Yes, sir. I deserve it. Blame me. Lu Huijin closed his eyes and deployed the ancient coping technique. If I'm not embarrassed, nobody's embarrassed. Wang Jun scrubbed like his life depended on it, which, given the 10-lap punishment, it kind of did. Meanwhile, Nurse Wang Mei sprinted to the doctor's office, looking like someone had flatlined. Dr. Tang jumped up, grabbed his medical kit, and bolted to room 406, only to find a very much alive Lu Huijin sitting up in bed, hastily yanking a blanket over his legs because Wang Jun had been mid-sponge bath. Dr. Tang clutched his chest. "You're alive? She made it sound like you were dying." Wang Mei slithered in behind him, twirling a strand of hair. "I was just so worried about Commander Lu's recovery." Wang Jun chucked his towel into the basin.
Out.
Let the doctor work. But Wang Mei wasn't leaving. She'd caught a glimpse of Lu Huijin's tensed arms as he grabbed the blanket, and suddenly she was very committed to assisting the doctor. "In nursing, patients have no gender," she announced professionally, eyes absolutely glued to his biceps. Dr. Tang checked Lu Huijin's pulse and was genuinely amazed. The man was recovering absurdly well for someone with multiple gunshot wounds. He started to ask if Lu Huijin had taken some kind of medicine during the mission because there seemed to be an unusual healing force in his body. He trailed off. Everyone in the room understood the implication. Lu Huijin said nothing, but privately he was stunned. That little jade bottle of pills I'd given him, it had apparently kept him alive when he shouldn't have been. His eyes drifted to Wang Mei, who was staring at the doctor's hands on his wrist like she was watching the season finale of her favorite drama. While I was out, Lu Huijin apparently handled the Nurse Wang Mei situation himself. He told her to leave and asked for an older nurse instead. His reason? She'd ignored my instructions about when to fetch the doctor, rushed in like the building was on fire, and was generally careless and flustered. Wang Jun backed him up. With a helpful, "Yep, that's right." Wang Mei's face went white. She ran out crying with a dramatic, "You'll regret this." Like this was a breakup scene and not a nursing reassignment. I had to give Lu Huijin credit. The man knew how to guard his virtue, as they say. He hadn't even waited for me to complain. Respectable. Dr. Tang finally got to examine him properly. He unwrapped the bandages and was stunned. The gunshot wounds were healing far better than expected. Wang Jun proudly announced that his commander had won the military fitness competition 3 years running, as if abs could deflect bullets. The doctor cleared him for light food and left, mentally replaying his surgery, wondering what he'd done so brilliantly. I wandered to a supply store near the hospital, walked around, bought nothing. I'm broke and my pocket dimension is basically a warehouse. I ducked into a corner and loaded my bag with bones, eggs, tomatoes, and flour from my space. At the hospital kitchen, a plump lady shouted that lunch was over. I explained I just needed to borrow a stove. She said no. I pulled out 8 eggs as payment. She looked at the head chef. He said I could use the stove and coal but not their oil or seasonings. Fair enough, I had everything in my bag anyway. I made bone and corn soup, steamed egg custard, and tomato egg noodle strips. The chef wandered over, surprised that someone who looked like she'd never touched a kitchen could cook so efficiently. I told him I just helped out at home sometimes. On my way back upstairs with the food, I found Wang Mei sitting on the staircase, crying into a handkerchief. The second she saw me, she jumped up and accused me of secretly plotting to get her removed. Two-faced, she called me. I pulled my food containers back protectively. No way was this emotional woman knocking over Lu Huijin's lunch. I don't know what happened while I was gone, I said, but at least I wasn't the one shamelessly throwing myself at someone else's fiancé. You were more excited about him waking up than I was. Anyone watching would have thought the man in that bed was your father. I strolled past her humming a tune. She stood there frozen for a good 5 seconds before chasing after me. Just as her hand was about to grab me, Wang Jun appeared out of nowhere with a combat hold on her wrist. What are you doing touching sister-in-law? She insulted me. Can only SHE say things? Wang Jun released her and stepped between us. A gentleman uses words, not hands. I lifted my food containers.
Wang Yun, hungry.
I made enough for you too. He was about to refuse on principle, but the smell of bone broth hit his nose. He swallowed hard.
Well,
if sister-in-law insists, Wang Mei tried one more time to demand an apology from me in the hallway. I blinked innocently and told her to stop looking for trouble. Then I walked into the hospital room. Lu Huijin had been sniffing himself nervously. Now that he was fully conscious, he was worried about his smell. Luckily, the towel I'd brought had a light fragrance that covered it up. I set the food containers on the table and opened them up. Steamed egg custard, a big bowl of bone broth, tomato egg noodle strips, and a side of pickled vegetables. Wang Jun stood there holding his empty bowl like a hopeful puppy. I poured half of everything into his bowl and told him not to bother with the hospital cafeteria tonight. I'd cook for him too. After one bite of the noodle strips, whatever polite refusal he'd been preparing died on his tongue. He just grunted and kept eating. I pulled up a stool next to Lu Huijin's bed. Want me to feed you? He tried to sit up on his own. Wang Jun nearly choked, shouting that the doctor said no sudden movements. Then, with impressive social awareness, he grabbed his bowl and left the room, closing the door behind him. I raised the head of the bed and picked up a spoon. Just let me feed you until you're better. His voice was hoarse from not talking for days. Thank you. Have you eaten? I'd had a bowl of soup while cooking. His lips were so dry and cracked. Clearly Wang Jun's nursing skills didn't extend to lip care. I spooned some bone broth into his mouth. After a few sips, he suddenly paused and asked to switch to the noodle strips instead. I realized he was probably thinking about the bathroom situation. Too much liquid when you can't move is a problem. While eating, he noticed my hands were smooth with no calluses and asked how that was possible, if I did housework. I told him the truth. My stepmother actually made her own daughter do all the visible chores so people would praise Su Ruhua as the hardworking one. He said my cooking was really good for someone who claimed not to work much. I told him it was probably natural talent, same as his physical strength. He'd never seen noodles made this way before, torn into small pieces instead of long strands. I explained it was easier for a bedridden person to eat bite-sized pieces without spilling soup everywhere. He finished half a bowl without realizing it. Then he told me I'd had a long journey and should go rest, and that Wang Jun could get him dinner from the cafeteria. I yawned and stretched. I was exhausted, but I'd already promised to bring dinner, and breaking promises wasn't my style. I told him I'd nap first and come back around 7. As I stretched, I caught him staring. His ears turned slightly red. I guess he was finally getting a good look at me. The fitted dress, the figure that wasn't hidden behind country clothes anymore. His eyes lingered on my face in a way they hadn't before. As I was leaving, I noticed Lu Huijin's ears were red again. I asked what he wanted for dinner. He said, whatever. I hate whatever. How am I supposed to cook whatever? But I figured a man who only thinks about fighting probably doesn't care much about food, so I let it go. He called Wang Jun in and told him to take the military food stipend and help me buy meat and eggs. I tried to explain that the good stuff at the market was only available in the morning. Going now in the afternoon would be pointless. Wang Jun saw my logic and handed me the whole bundle of grain tickets and cash meant for Lu Huijin's recovery meals. I happily pocketed it. Then he offered to bike me back to my guest house. I told him I'd just ride the bicycle myself and bring it back tonight. His face lit up. Tonight meant another home-cooked meal. We were heading downstairs when I spotted trouble, my half-sister Su Ruhua, dragging Heat Sung-hao along. She saw me with Wang Jun and immediately started scheming. Sister, you're back in the capital? Did you run away from the countryside? Are you getting married to this man? Are you pregnant? She was practically glowing with malice, firing off accusations loud enough for the whole hallway to hear. I was exhausted. I'd been on a train for 3 days. I wanted sleep.
You're really loud, I said.
She kept going, asking if the baby was Wang Jun's and whether he knew I was already engaged. She wanted to destroy my image in front of Heat Sung-hao. She knew he still had feelings for me, and she needed to crush that. I walked up to her and slapped her across the face, so hard it echoed through the corridor. The bystanders who'd been watching suddenly scattered, afraid they'd be next. Wang Jun wanted to give me a thumbs up. What gives you the right to hit me? She shrieked. Your mouth stinks. I'm clearing the bad luck. I grabbed her by the neck and hit her again. That one's for your filthy mouth just now. Another slap. That one's for signing me up to go to the countryside. Another. And that's for stealing my things. Heat Sung-hao tried to intervene. Apparently Su Ruhua had told him she was pregnant, and they'd come to the hospital for a checkup. His mother had insisted on verification before agreeing to a marriage. He was worried about a pregnant woman getting hit. But Wang Jun grabbed him in a hold he couldn't break free from. As far as Wang Jun was concerned, that woman had insulted his sister-in-law and deserved every slap. Heat Sung-hao heard me say, stealing my things, and suddenly looked at me with new understanding. He actually thought I meant him, that in my heart he'd been mine. The man really overestimated his place in my life. Heat Sung-hao suddenly went soft and said, she's pregnant, go easy on her. My hand froze mid-swing. What? I looked at Su Ruhua's face, swollen, scared, furious, and gave her one last slap, lighter this time. I'd already hit her hard enough that her face was puffed up like a bun. If she actually miscarried, she'd blame me for the rest of my life. I shoved her into Heat Sung-hao's arms and told her to stay far away from me in the future. Then I casually mentioned that if she came near me again, I'd tell everyone how she'd been dating 2 men at once and had swapped my arranged meeting with Lu Huijin for herself. That shut her up. I checked my watch. This nonsense had cost me half an hour of precious nap time. Should have checked my horoscope before leaving this morning. After I left, Heat Sung-hao's brain started working. To timing? What does she mean? Su Ruhua cried and denied everything, but she slipped up. She claimed not to know who Lu Huijin was, then mentioned he had kids. Heat Sung-hao caught it immediately. She threatened to kill herself to prove her innocence, which only made things more awkward. Then the nurse called her name. Her test results were ready. The report showed 2+ signs. Pregnant. The doctor confirmed it and told Heat Sung-hao not to hit women. Looking at Su Ruhua's swollen pig face next to the memory of how polished and beautiful I'd looked, Heat Sung-hao felt a hollow ache in his chest. He finally understood what his mother meant when she said he must have been starving to eat anything. What he didn't know was that Su Ruhua's pregnancy test was a fraud. Earlier, she'd paid a pregnant woman 1 yuan for a cup of urine and swapped it for her own sample. The pregnant woman was outside the hospital at that very moment telling her husband about the weird lady who'd bought her pee, happily planning to spend the money on a bowl of noodles. I biked back to the guest house and collapsed. Meanwhile, Wang Jun reported everything to Lu Huijin, how I'd beaten up my half-sister, how she'd accused me of being Wang Jun's girlfriend. Lu Huijin's face went cold. His fiancée had been publicly humiliated and misidentified as someone else's woman. If anything, I'd gone too easy on her. Then he asked Wang Jun suspiciously, "Were you walking very close to her?" Wang Jun's face screamed pure innocence.
No.
"I just offered to bike her home. I don't know why those people assumed anything." Lu Huijin looked down at his injured legs, frustrated. He wanted to get out of this bed more than anything. Being stuck here while his fiancée dealt with all this alone was driving him crazy. I slept for a couple of hours, then went into my pocket dimension to start cooking dinner. My pocket dimension's kitchen is honestly amazing. Everything resets and cleans itself overnight. Spices refill, dishes wash themselves, even the condiments restock. There's a mixer, an oven, everything. The only downside is I cook for one, so the cabinets are stuffed with uneaten cakes and snacks. I grabbed some fresh scallions, purple eggplants, and caught a squawking old hen from the yard. Tonight's menu: millet porridge, scallion pancakes, mushroom chicken stir-fry, and braised eggplant. I kneaded the dough, let it rest, and cooked the other dishes first. Then I rolled out the pancakes with oil, salt, and scallions, frying them golden and crispy on both sides. The smell was incredible. I couldn't resist eating two myself before packing everything up. At 6:30, I biked to the hospital humming a song. Wang Jun was on the 4th floor scanning the horizon like a starving hawk. When I tapped his shoulder from behind, he nearly snapped at me, thinking I was another nurse before realizing it was me. Inside, Lu Huijin had smoothed his blanket flat before I came in, clearly trying to look presentable. I split the food with Wang Jun, who took his share and disappeared with impressive speed. I'd cut Lu Huijin's pancakes into small pieces. As I leaned in to feed him, he seemed to notice my perfume. When I started on the porridge, he reached for the spoon himself. "Let me try." I feel much better now. I could tell he was embarrassed being fed, so I held the bowl while he spooned. I added another pillow behind him, leaning close to adjust it. He turned his head sharply to the side. I think my chest was a bit too close for his comfort. My cool fingers brushed his arm, and he flinched. "Are you cold?" I asked. He said no. He definitely wasn't cold. If anything, the man looked slightly overheated. Watching him eat was oddly satisfying, like a raising simulation game, but with a handsome face instead of virtual piglets. He noticed me staring and started getting self-conscious, wondering if something was on his face. To change the subject, he asked about my run-in with Suruhua. Then, out of nowhere, he said, "When I'm healed, should we hold a wedding banquet here in the capital?" He figured it would stop the rumors, my sister running around telling people I'd switched boyfriends. I said I didn't have anyone to invite. No family worth calling in the capital. Grandfather was in the countryside, and my father was useless. He said he hadn't told his own family about his injury either. His brother had died in combat, and his grandparents were too old for that kind of shock. I asked if this was his first time getting hurt this badly. "First time being unconscious for days," he said matter-of-factly. Injuries were just part of the job. Coming from my peaceful modern life, hearing this hit differently. He suddenly seemed even more admirable. My gaze softened and he noticed. Wang Jun came in to clear the dishes and complimented my cooking, saying his commander was truly lucky. I grinned and said, "He really is." I went to wash my hands, the water splashing softly in the bathroom. From the bed, Lu Huijin felt a dull ache rising in his lower abdomen. Some things even a military hero can't fight, like needing the bathroom after drinking an entire bowl of porridge when you can barely move. Lu Huijin desperately needed the bathroom. The problem? Only I was in the room, and asking your fiancé to help you pee ranks somewhere between humiliating and absolutely not. He tried to tough it out, clenching his fists and sweating. I poured him a glass of hot water. "Drink up, you need to stay hydrated." His lips pressed together even tighter. He knew that if he drank that water, it would be game over right there on the bed. "It's getting late. Maybe you should head back to the guest house," he suggested, voice strained. I just pulled out a razor I'd bought at the guest house. His stubble was bothering me. "It's only 8. Let me shave you first." I went to rinse the razor, and the sound of running water made him grip the sheets even harder. When I came back, he was covered in sweat, lips white, clearly suffering. I rushed over thinking it was his wounds. He dodged my hand when I tried to check his pulse, and suddenly it clicked. "You need to use the bathroom?" He had no choice but to nod. But he absolutely refused to go in the bed. "Help me to the toilet." I told him he might collapse. He said he could handle it. I pulled back the blanket and discovered he was wearing nothing but oversized shorts below the waist. They cut everything else off for surgery. I locked the door and pulled the curtain shut, feeling very weird about the whole situation. I helped him up, telling him to just pretend I was a random nurse. He thought to himself that if it were a female nurse, he'd rather wet the bed. We made it to the bathroom in a few steps. Then came the next crisis. He needed to pull down his shorts, with me right there. He regretted sending Wang Jun to wash dishes with every fiber of his being. "Can you do it yourself, or do you need help?" I asked carefully. Through gritted teeth, "I can do it." I turned away and closed my eyes. He struggled through it, wincing from his wounds. During the process, I couldn't help but accidentally notice certain things. Let's just say the proportions seemed concerning from a future wife perspective. If we actually got married, I might be in for some trouble. The whole ordeal ended to the sound of trickling water. My face was burning red. I cleaned his hands, got him back to bed, and washed my own hands thoroughly. Then I picked up the razor and started shaving him. I wet his face and lathered up his jaw. His chin had gotten sharper and more defined since I last saw him. As I studied his face, the trembling eyelashes, the red-tipped ears, I thought to myself that agreeing to this arranged marriage really had been entirely because of that face. "Has anyone ever done this for you before?" I whispered. He opened his eyes immediately and shook his head. In the dim yellow lamplight, my soapy fingers on his skin, his heartbeat quickening. Neither of us spoke for a moment. Then I said softly, "Hold still." Starting now. He closed his eyes obediently while I carefully guided the old-fashioned blade across his jaw. Handsome people really do have it easy. Even shaving him felt like a privilege. Outside, poor Wang Jun had been squatting by the door for ages. He'd come back from washing dishes to find the curtains drawn and the door locked. He didn't dare go in. He kept pacing in front of room 407, jumping at every sound, terrified a doctor would show up for rounds while whatever was happening inside was still happening. When I finished and wiped his face clean, I joked, "There, now you're going to attract even more little nurses." He frowned seriously. "I had nothing to do with the nurse situation. She's been replaced. Don't overthink it." I tucked in his blanket and said, "I'm not overthinking anything. Tomorrow I'll measure you for some clothes, though. Can't have you lying around shirtless for everyone to see." His jaw tightened. He clearly wasn't used to his fiancé teasing him. The next day after breakfast, I locked the door and pulled the curtains again. I took out a measuring tape to get Lu Huijin sizes for clothes. He told me to make 2 sets of pajamas but skip the regular clothes. He wore his uniform every day anyway. He'd noticed I liked changing outfits and wanted me to keep the fabric tickets for myself. Measuring him on the bed meant getting very close. When I wrapped the tape around his waist, my hair brushed against his stomach and he tensed up. I couldn't resist pressing his abs, my first time touching real ones. He let out a low grunt. I panicked. "Did I hurt you?" "I'll be gentler." Then my hair got tangled in his bandages. I was stuck, bent over him, trying to untangle myself without hurting him. He told me to hold still and carefully freed my hair himself. Outside, Wang Jun returned to find the curtains closed again. Then he heard muffled sounds and things like, "I'll be gentler," and "Hold still, don't move," coming from inside. His eyes went wide. He immediately went into guard dog mode, watching for anyone approaching. Dr. Tang showed up for his regular checkup. Wang Jun practically tackled him in the hallway with an aggressive greeting, trying to stall. "Doctor. Long time no see." The doctor nearly fell over from the backslap. "Did you eat too much this morning?" The new nurse noticed the drawn curtains and asked why it was dark in there during the daytime. Inside, Lu Huijin and I quickly tidied ourselves up before I opened the door. Wang Jun exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for an hour. The nurse took one look at my flushed face and decided Wang Mei had been right. I was clearly some kind of seductress who'd trapped the commander in his own room in broad daylight. though she also admitted to herself she'd never seen anyone this pretty. After Dr. Tang examined Lu Huijin and marveled again at his recovery speed, I left to go sew the clothes. The moment I was gone, Wang Jun cleared his throat and asked the doctor with great seriousness, "So, for someone in Commander Lu's condition, how soon can he be, intimate, Dr.?" Tang didn't hear him the first time. "Can he what?" Lu Huijin's face went dark as a thundercloud. He shot Wang Jun a death glare, knowing exactly what kind of misunderstanding was behind this question. Dr. Tang finally caught it. "Intimate? He's bedridden and you're already thinking that far ahead?" He said at least 2 months, then suggested Wang Jun visit Dr. Wang, the brain specialist. Wang Jun's face fell. "I don't have brain problems. I was asking for national interests." After the doctor left, Lu Huijin pulled Wang Jun close and interrogated him. Wang Jun tried to play it off as concern for his commander's marital happiness. Lu Huijin, to protect my reputation, explained flatly. She was measuring me for clothes. Nothing else. Wang Jun nodded frantically, like a pecking chicken. "Of course. I understand completely." Lu Huijin was fuming. The man understood nothing, though he privately admitted that his own thoughts hadn't been entirely pure during the measuring either. He decided to drop it. I biked away to go sew, blissfully unaware of the chaos I'd left behind. The young nurse followed me out and watched me leave, mesmerized by how I walked, dressed, and wore my hair clip. She went back to the nurse's station where Wang Mei was putting on makeup in a new dress and said, "Wang Mei, I saw Commander Lu's fiancé today." After seeing me, Wang Mei's looks suddenly seemed rather plain by comparison. Back at the nurse's station, Wang Mei's colleague told her everything: the drawn curtains, the flushed faces, how I looked like a little fairy when I came out. Wang Mei snapped her eyebrow pencil in half. She convinced herself that I was winning Lu Huijin's heart through shameless tactics, not talent. She looked in the mirror, puffed up her chest, and decided she wasn't that much worse than me. Just a slightly thicker waist and a less pretty face. No big deal, right? She put on the same shade of yellow dress I'd worn the day before, applied lipstick, and made a pot of chicken soup. She waited at the stairwell until Wang Jun left for something, then slipped into Lu Huijin's room like a fish, tugging her collar down for maximum effect. Lu Huijin opened his eyes expecting me, and instead saw her in a knockoff version of my outfit. He was not pleased. She tried a soft, sweet voice, clearly imitating mine, and offered the soup as an apology. Lu Huijin said her impression of me gave him goosebumps severe enough to make their own soup. When the gentle approach failed, she escalated. She claimed she'd been caring for him while he was unconscious, bathing him, and that they already had a special relationship. She said she could do everything I could do and more. She begged for a chance to compete with me fairly. Lu Huijin thought back to how badly he'd smelled when he woke up. Clearly nobody had been wiping him down regularly. This woman was lying. For the first time in his life, he felt sexually harassed. He was disgusted. He grabbed a whistle from his bedside table and blew it, 3 sharp bursts. Wang Jun, who'd been downstairs and had been trained that morning to respond to the whistle like a military dog, came sprinting up the stairs. Meanwhile, Wang Mei panicked. She could see Lu Huijin's murderous battlefield expression. In desperation, she started pulling at her collar, trying to expose herself, figuring if someone walked in and saw her undressed, Lu Huijin would be forced to take responsibility. But her dress had a tiny neckline and wouldn't budge. She'd never done this before and hadn't planned the wardrobe properly. Before she could find the zipper, Lu Huijin sensed what she was doing and flung several coins at her pressure points with full force. She crumpled to the ground in pain. Wang Jun burst through the door with backup, saw a woman collapsed on the floor, and asked if he should throw her out. Lu Huijin told him to fetch the department head instead. Reality hit Wang Mei like a truck. She begged to be let go, promising never to show her face again. She started crying, terrified of losing her job and her reputation. She tried to bolt for the door. One of the soldiers grabbed her arm. "The boss didn't say you could leave," she sobbed harder. "Please, let me go." Lu Huijin said nothing. He just looked away, face cold as winter. Lu Huijin refused to let Wang Mei go. Wang Jun literally carried the department head, Director Huang, on his shoulder all the way to the room. The poor man arrived dizzy and nauseous, thinking someone had died. When he saw Wang Mei crying on the floor, he was confused. He knew her family, used to give her candy as a kid, and had even considered her as a daughter-in-law for his own son. Lu Huijin laid out exactly what happened, no exaggeration. Then he dropped a bomb. If she can try this with me, how many other injured soldiers have nurses done this to over the years? Director Huang's face went serious fast. He knew nurses competed to care for military officers hoping to land a good marriage, but he'd never imagined it going this far. He promised a proper investigation and dragged Wang Mei out. At the door, Wang Mei ran straight into me. Her face went scarlet. I said nothing, and that silence clearly cut deeper than any insult. She bolted down the hallway, running so fast that Director Huang couldn't keep up despite wheezing after her. Inside, I found several of Lu Huijin's military buddies visiting, teasing him about wedding banquets. I walked in with a bag of homemade beef jerky. They all shouted, "Hello, sister-in-law," in unison. I handed out the jerky, and when one of them tried to share with Lu Huijin, I stopped him. "There's chili in it. He can't eat spicy food right now." Lu Huijin had been practically drooling at the smell, but when I called him Huijin-ji, in that soft voice, he decided the beef jerky could wait. After all, they'd only get one taste, but he'd get to eat my cooking for the rest of his life. After everyone left, I pulled up a stool and sat by his bed in silence. He asked what was wrong. I poked his cheek and said, "I saw everything just now. I had no idea your face attracted this much trouble. I regret shaving you. You looked 5 years older with the stubble. Should have left it." Touching his face felt like petting a lion, strangely satisfying. He caught my wandering hand in his. "Then I won't shave anymore." His rough, calloused fingers wrapped around mine, his thumb unconsciously rubbing my skin. His heartbeat was speeding up. He stared at me. I leaned closer and noticed for the first time how beautiful his eyes were, bright as stars. His stubble was already growing back. They say fast-growing facial hair means high testosterone.
Good to know.
I caught myself wondering what it would be like to kiss him, and my ears turned red. I yanked my hand from his and stammered, "I'm going to go make you food." As I was heading out the door, tripping over my own feet, his voice came from behind. "You're walking with both arms and legs on the same side. Careful you don't trip." There was a teasing lilt in his voice I'd never heard before. My whole face went red. I spun around and snapped, "Do you want lunch or not?" He realized he'd upset me and actually got out of bed to apologize. "I didn't mean to tease you." But then my eyes drifted downward. He was only wearing those big loose shorts, and something was very much awake down there. Impossible to miss. My eyes went wide. "Why are you being a pervert?" He followed my gaze, understood the situation immediately, and dove back under his blanket. His voice came out flat and defeated. "When will my pajamas be ready?" I fired back. "Don't bother wearing anything I make. You'd probably put it on with matching arms and legs." Then I bolted. Outside, I was patting my chest trying to calm down. What I'd seen earlier was already alarming enough, but the upgraded version was absolutely terrifying. Was it too late to switch husbands? The one who'd suffer in the end would be me. Wang Jun saw me flee and asked if I was heading back. I nodded vaguely and stumbled downstairs, mentally scrolling through recipes for cooling teas. Gold, silver, flower, honey tea. That man needed his fire doused immediately. Wang Jun went inside and told Lu Huijin I'd seemed distracted. Lu Huijin glared daggers at him. Wang Jun, completely misreading the situation, launched into relationship advice. "Commander, you have zero experience with women. You need to sweet-talk them, buy them things, be patient." "How many girlfriends have you had?" Lu Huijin asked.
"One."
"She dumped me." Lu Huijin's mouth went flat. He'd almost taken romantic advice from a man with a 0% success rate. "Get out." Meanwhile, Su Ruhua and He Tsonghao had brought the pregnancy test results home. His mother saw the 2+ signs and accepted her fate. His father, learning about the whole mess for the first time, was furious. He ordered Heat Sung-hao to hand over 3 months' salary and told them to get their marriage certificate quickly before the belly started showing. His mother refused to hold a big wedding. What's there to celebrate about this situation? Just get the certificate and hand out candy. Su Ruhua gripped her chopsticks until her knuckles turned white. Every other bride got a proper wedding, but she kept quiet. Her plan was simple. Get through the door, have the baby, gain power through the child, then slowly teach her mother-in-law a lesson with well-placed pillow talk. Heat Sung-hao sat silently through all of it, not daring to say a word. But his mind drifted to a memory. How I'd once told him I wanted to wear the prettiest dress and have the grandest wedding. I really had become prettier now. He zoned out, lost in that thought, until his father overruled his mother and said they'd hold a small wedding because he still had to maintain face with his work colleagues. His mother turned to Su Ruhua. Will one table be enough for your family's guests? Over at the He family, Su Ruhua swallowed her pride when Heat Sung-hao's mother looked down on her village relatives and offered just one table for her side at the wedding. No one mentioned a bride price, which made her nervous, but she kept quiet. Get through the door first, fight later. When Heat Sung-hao walked her home afterward, she asked him to buy her a red dress for the wedding. He grumbled about his 3 months' confiscated salary but agreed, spending nearly 100 yuan on a red dress, shoes, and a silk scarf. Su Ruhua eyed all the nice things in the department store and thought bitterly about how much Lu Huijin had spent on my engagement gifts. But she didn't push her luck, for now. She still hadn't actually gotten pregnant yet. That first encounter had been faked with bought urine, and Heat Sung-hao had been away on business since, giving her no chance for a second attempt. So when he walked her upstairs, she invited him in for tea. Then she happened to go change into her new red dress and forgot to close the bedroom door. He peeked through the gap, saw everything, remembered how good last time felt, and walked right in. Afterward, she tried to bring up the bride price while cuddled in his arms. He brushed it off. Don't kill the mood. She pushed again. He said they'd talk about it later. Then the old bed started creaking again. He went home glowing at 5 o'clock. His mother asked if he'd been with Su Ruhua during the pregnancy test that morning. He confirmed it. She sighed. Her son really was a sharpshooter. She had no idea the test results were fake and her son was being methodically trapped. Back at the hospital, Lu Huijin had been anxiously waiting for 2 hours after our awkward morning incident. When I finally showed up with lunch, I acted completely normal, as if nothing had happened. He relaxed immediately. Then I opened the food containers. The intoxicating smell of braised pork and spicy rabbit filled the room. Lu Huijin started salivating. Wang Jun's eyes lit up. I gave Wang Jun half the meat dishes. Then I took the rest of the meat for myself. For Lu Huijin, I revealed the second layer. Plain stir-fried bean sprouts, blanched greens, and sautéed lotus root. All vegetables. Even blander than his previous meals. Wang Jun read the room instantly, grabbed his food, and fled. I sat down across from Lu Huijin and started eating a glistening, wobbling cube of braised pork mixed into white rice, right in front of his face. He asked the question burning in his mind. Are you still angry? I smiled innocently. Angry about what? I'm not angry at all. I just think you're running hot, so I made you some cooling vegetables. There's gold-silver flour tea too, guaranteed to put out the fire. Lu Huijin ate his sad vegetables while the smell of braised pork tortured him from across the table. I'm not overheated, he insisted. Oh? So you were being a pervert then? He wisely changed the subject, mentioning he'd recover enough to walk within a week. Then he pulled out an envelope with 1,000 yuan and told me to buy clothes and makeup for the wedding. He was planning a banquet at the state restaurant next Saturday. 1,000 yuan just for taking care of him and buying a few outfits? I immediately fished a piece of braised pork from my bowl and plopped it into his. I'll make you something extra good tonight. He froze, then quickly ate it, and I realized I'd used my own chopsticks. An indirect kiss. His ears went red again, but my mind was already on the money. Between funding my grandfather's family and living off my pocket dimension, I was technically rich in food but broke in cash. That afternoon, I went shopping at the capital's biggest department store. At the entrance, I ran into Liru. the saleswoman who'd been rude to me months ago. She'd been demoted to greeter and begged me to ask my fiancé to reverse it. I told her it wasn't Lu Huijin's doing and she should look elsewhere for enemies. For the wedding, military couples usually wore uniforms, but I wasn't into that. I found a Chinese-style floral collar blouse paired with a red pleated skirt, plus a red handbag and cream leather shoes. Then I bought Lu Huijin a white dress shirt and black trousers. We'd match perfectly. Over the next few days, Lu Huijin recovered at an incredible pace, thanks to all the spirit spring water I'd been sneaking him. His commanding officer had been monitoring the situation through Wang Jun's reports. But Wang Jun being Wang Jun, every debrief devolved into poetry about my appearance. She's more beautiful than the moon hiding from shame, more stunning than fish sinking in awe. I'm asking about her character, not her face, the commander snapped. Wang Jun pivoted to food. Her cooking is unbelievable, sir. Every meal is different, every dish makes you want seconds. The point. Does she seem like she wants to run? Wang Jun stood at attention. Absolutely not, sir. When she first arrived, the commander was still unconscious, and she held his hand and wouldn't let go. I'm certain she would have kissed him if I wasn't there. And the moment she showed up, he woke from his coma. Their love is like glue. They even pull the curtains in broad daylight. He slapped his hand over his mouth. Lu Huijin had specifically ordered him to take that secret to his grave. The phone line went dead. Wang Jun figured it was just a bad connection and trotted back to the hospital, satisfied with his thorough report. The commander had actually hung up on purpose. He was genuinely surprised. He'd assumed I was just a gold digger seeking military protection. But I'd stayed by Lu Huijin's bedside through everything without flinching. Maybe this girl really was military wife material. His wife rolled her eyes when he told her about it. You're like a dog chasing mice, always meddling where you're not needed. Lu Huijin is a grown man who got to his rank by knowing exactly what he wants. Stop being annoying before he freezes you out. The commander tried to defend himself. I was just worried he'd be blinded by a pretty face. His wife burst out laughing. You've introduced him to plenty of beauties over the years, including your own niece, the regimental flower, and he rejected every single one. You can't raise two different people in the same bed. The commander went quiet, thoroughly defeated. His wife glanced at the jar of my chili sauce on the table and added, for the sake of keeping her cooking coming our way, you'd better behave yourself. The commanding officer's wife hoarded my meat sauce so jealously that they only ate it at lunch now. The officer finally approved Lu Huijin's marriage report without any more obstacles. After all, Lu Huijin had nearly died earning that approval. He sent a telegram the next day confirming it was done. By Friday, Lu Huijin could walk again. He'd already had a buddy book a wedding banquet at the state restaurant for Saturday. When I brought breakfast that morning, he was fully dressed in the white shirt I'd bought him, looking sharp. Today's Friday, right? I didn't get the date wrong, I asked.
No.
But we're getting our marriage certificate today. Just like that.
No fanfare, no build-up.
But honestly, nothing about this marriage had been conventional, so I'd already made my peace with it. After breakfast, he biked us to the guest house so I could change and grab my documents. This time when I got on the back of the bicycle, I didn't hesitate. I wrapped my arms right around his waist. His abs tightened under my hands. Hold on tight, he said with a cough. I leaned forward. Are you sure you can handle this? Don't crash us. Through gritted teeth. I can handle it. Just sit still. At the Civil Affairs office, they processed our military marriage quickly. I walked out holding a thin piece of paper, stunned. We don't even need a photo? That was so simple. Lu Huijin looked at me in the golden sunlight and said, then let's go take a photo together. At the nearby photo studio, we sat down in front of the camera. The photographer told Lu Huijin to lean closer and smile. Lu Huijin hadn't smiled in so long that his attempt made the photographer's hand shake. It looked worse than not smiling at all. So, I turned my head and kissed the corner of his mouth.
Lichtning fast.
His lips felt warm. Before he could process it, I was already facing forward again. But it worked. His mouth curved into a real smile, and the photographer snapped 2 shots. Walking out, my face was hot enough to fry an egg. What was I thinking? We'd been together all this time without any real intimacy, and I'd just kissed him in a photo studio. What if he thought I was ridiculous, like when he teased me for walking funny? Neither of us spoke all the way back. I noticed he pedaled faster than usual, which meant I had to hold him tighter. Was he angry about the public kiss? Did it embarrass him? Back at the hospital room, he kicked Wang Jun out the second we walked in. Wang Jun read the room perfectly and disappeared. The moment the door closed, Lu Huijin pressed me against it. His hands on my shoulders, he looked down at my slightly parted lips. The height difference was too much. He bent down but couldn't quite reach. So, he lifted me up. Then he kissed me. But it was his first kiss, so all he did was press his lips against mine and stay there. I waited and waited. Nothing else happened. Getting impatient, I took his face in my hands and kissed him properly. His lips were surprisingly soft, nothing like his rock-hard muscles. I bit his lower lip gently and opened my eyes to watch his face. The usual coldness was completely gone. So this is what he looked like when being kissed. He sensed me watching and opened his eyes too. Seeing the playfulness in mine, he tilted his head, lifted my chin, and started tracing my lips the way I'd traced his. A quick learner, this one. Lu Huijin was not a man who accepted defeat. If he didn't know how to kiss, he'd just keep kissing until he figured it out. I'd started with the attitude of teaching a beginner, but suddenly he'd taken control. His arms locked around me like iron clamps, and I was forcefully reminded that this was a young, strong, very much alive man. The air turned scorching. His breathing grew heavy. I couldn't breathe. My heart was hammering. I bit his lip to snap him out of it. He buried his face in my neck, panting.
Sorry.
I overstepped. I pushed off him and jumped down. I'm going to go make you food. I didn't wait for a response, I just bolted. He touched his lips after I left, still feeling the warmth. He wondered if I'd hated it. He clenched his fist. I practically flew down the stairs past Wang Jun, fumbled with my bike lock 3 times, and pedaled back to the guest house at maximum speed. I dove under my blankets and lay there in the dark, heart pounding, still feeling his breath, his warmth, his scent everywhere. This was my first real kiss in 2 lifetimes, and I had absolutely no idea what to do with myself. Back at the hospital, Wang Jun reminded Lu Huijin they needed to check out before the wedding tomorrow. Lu Huijin said they'd wait for me. His buddies had already decorated the family quarters with red, double happiness characters. They waited. Noon came and went. 1 o'clock. Lu Huijin kept checking his watch. Wang Jun figured I was angry about not getting a proper celebration on our registration day. Who makes their bride cook lunch on the day they get their marriage certificate, he pointed out. He suggested buying me gifts, hair accessories, face cream, clothes. Lu Huijin thought about how my eyes always lit up at the sight of money. Simple enough, he'd just give me more. I'd been rolling around in bed for hours, replaying the kiss, before I finally got up to cook. I made proper Beijing-style noodles with fried sauce, diced pork belly rendered golden in its own fat, mixed with a rich bean paste sauce, served over hand-pulled noodles with fresh cucumber and carrot on the side. I arrived at 1:30. I wasn't sorry for being late. He'd kissed me without asking, so letting him wait was only fair. I knocked on the door, shoved the food containers at Wang Jun, and turned to leave. Lu Huijin caught my wrist from behind. I'm being discharged this afternoon. Can we eat together and talk about the wedding? I didn't answer. This morning was impulsive. It won't happen again. That felt strange. Did he mean he wouldn't be impulsive again or that he'd never kiss me again? I wasn't sure which one bothered me more. I followed him back inside. Wang Jun hadn't dared touch the food without permission. We divided it up and dug in. The noodles were still hot, chewy and fragrant with that rich sauce. Lu Huijin's eyes lit up. This was his favorite, and he hadn't had proper noodles like these since joining the military. He inhaled the entire bowl. Then he looked at me and asked, "Want me to take you shopping this afternoon?" Wang Jun left to handle the discharge paperwork, closing the door behind him. Alone with Lu Huijin, I couldn't look him in the eye. "Are you avoiding me?" he asked. I shook my head. "I just haven't figured some things out yet." His voice dropped low. "After we're married, I won't force you. We can keep things the way they are. Whenever you're ready, we'll become real husband and wife. That should have been exactly what I wanted to hear. So, why did it make me feel sad? My throat tightened. I didn't know what liking someone was supposed to feel like, but whatever was happening to me seemed like it. The problem was, he'd agreed to marry me out of duty because of our childhood arrangement. What if all he felt was responsibility, not love? They say men can be physical without feelings. I didn't want that kind of relationship. My eyes started stinging. I'm going. You get ready. My voice cracked. He looked pained, watching me almost cry. His voice came out rough. Okay? Be careful going home. I'll pick you up tomorrow morning. Try to feel better. I grabbed my bag and practically fled. Wang Jun saw me rush past with red eyes and was completely confused. He taught his commander all his romance tips. How had things gone this wrong? Lu Huijin spent the afternoon arranging everything. The wedding car, the bicycle procession, confirming the restaurant menu. His sister Lu Leking was waiting at home. She'd decorated the house with red, double happiness, characters, and transformed his bedroom into a bridal suite. She scolded him for coming home so late the night before his own wedding and worried his permanent scowl would scare me off. That night, lying alone on the wedding bed, he thought about me, shaving his face, feeding him, the way my eyelashes trembled when he kissed me. He'd been too hasty today. Next time, he promised himself he wouldn't scare me. Meanwhile, Su Ruhua was also getting married tomorrow to He Songhao. She told her mother the bride price was small, but at least she'd landed him. She consoled herself thinking about all the good things that were supposed to be mine in the original story, now belonging to her. Her father hadn't invited any village relatives, too embarrassing, just a few factory leaders. On my wedding morning, Lu Huijin had hired an experienced old lady to do my makeup. The moment she slathered the first layer of white paste on my face, I nearly jumped out of my skin. I'd forgotten this era's idea of bridal beauty involved coating your face like a wall. And that rouge. I was not leaving this room looking like a baboon's backside. I grabbed her hand. Ma'am, I'll do it myself, she frowned. Every bride around here gets done by me. It doesn't look good now, but once I add the rouge, you'll be gorgeous as a fairy. She studied my face and admitted it was the prettiest she'd ever worked on. But I had zero confidence in her technique. I firmly refused, promising to still pay her full fee, since she'd already done the facial threading. She crossed her arms and stood to the side, curious to see what I could possibly do better. I went straight to wash off the white plaster. My pores could finally breathe again. My skin was naturally white and clear, so I just needed a light dusting of powder, some lip color, and shaped eyebrows. I'd braided my hair, wet the night before so. It had natural waves. I pinned it into an elegant updo and secured it with a headband I'd made myself from wire, decorated with tiny red flowers and seed pearls. A silk scarf around my neck, then the red pleated skirt. The old makeup lady's jaw dropped. I've never seen a bride this beautiful in my life. She couldn't even figure out what I'd done differently. She just knew my foundation was good, and my taste was expensive. Right on time, there was a knock at the door. Since I had no family or friends to play the traditional door-blocking games, we skipped straight to the entrance. Lu Huijin walked in with his groomsmen and froze the moment he saw me. His eyes went bright. His buddies started cheering. Hello, sister-in-law. Lucky man. Kiss her. Kiss her. But he just stood there staring until I blushed and looked away. He looked incredible too. Sharp brows, straight nose, perfectly groomed. Standing together, we were a striking match. But after yesterday's kiss disaster, he wasn't about to try anything. He simply lifted me into his arms. His hands stayed exactly where they should, but everywhere our bodies touched felt like it was on fire. I felt like I was being carried by a furnace. He carried me down the stairs to firecrackers booming outside. I buried my face in his broad chest, hands over my ears, smiling. Kids swarmed us begging for wedding candy, and we handed out fruit drops to every child in sight. The street was filled with cheering, laughter, and firecrackers. He set me gently into the wedding car, an actual automobile, decorated with big red flowers. His friend Han Lin was driving. Han Lin nearly crashed when he caught Lu Huijin gazing at me with soft, tender eyes, something he'd never seen from his ice-cold military buddy in his entire life. The car procession rolled slowly through the streets toward the state restaurant. Children at the venue spotted the car and started shouting, "The bride is here." She came in a car. Here's where things got funny. My father happened to be at the same restaurant, at Su Ruhua's wedding reception at a different table. When he heard the car and saw the commotion, he assumed it was Hee Seong-hao's grand gesture for his daughter's wedding. He puffed up with pride. His work leaders were impressed. "Your daughter married well. A car for the bride, very fancy." Then Lu Huijin stepped out of the car. My father's smile froze. That wasn't Hee Seong-hao's back. Then he saw the woman being helped out of the car, and his pupils dilated. That was his other daughter.
Me.
He'd barely recognized me. The last time he saw me, I wore drab gray clothes and my skin wasn't this luminous. All dressed up, I looked like a completely different person. His face went ice cold. His wife nudged him with her elbow. His leader's little boy ran back inside, clutching for candies. "Daddy, the brother's car was so big and the sister was so pretty." The leader laughed and told the boy to thank Uncle Su, since that was his daughter. My father could only smile awkwardly. It wasn't even the same daughter. The little boy thanked my father sweetly, and my dad had to awkwardly accept, unable to explain that the glamorous bride wasn't actually his daughter's wedding. It got worse when Lu Huijin and I walked right past his tables toward our banquet section next door. His leader blinked in confusion. Then the actual bride and groom, Su Ruhua and Hee Seong-hao, arrived on a bicycle. The leader realized he'd been praising the wrong couple the whole time. Both weddings started serving food simultaneously, and the contrast was brutal. Our tables had 10 dishes: braised pork, lamb spine hot pot, Peking shredded pork, red braised pig trotters, sour fish soup, all premium. Su Ruhua's tables had 8 dishes, decent enough, but obviously a tier below. Little Jun stared longingly at our side and whispered to his dad, "Can I sit at the pretty sister's table?" "Their food looks better." His father smacked his hand with chopsticks. My father noticed the difference too. His meal was fine on its own, but sitting right next to ours, it felt like a slap in the face. Lu Huijin and I started making our rounds to toast guests. His sister Lu Leking ran up and grabbed my hand, gushing that I looked like a fairy. She was a sweet girl with dimples, but I remembered from the novel that she'd mysteriously disappear after getting into college. The book barely mentioned it, treating her tragedy as just background flavor for the hero's hardship. But standing in front of me, she was a real person. I made a mental note to watch out for her. Then came the collision. Lu Huijin and I were walking between tables when we came face to face with Su Ruhua and Hee Seong-hao doing their own toasts.
Su Ruhu fiancé.
Her nails dug into Hee Seong-hao's arms so hard, he yelped. She stared at us in disbelief. At the hospital she'd seen me with Wang Jun and assumed I'd moved on. Yet here I was, married to Lu Huijin. "What are you doing here?" she sputtered. I looked at her flatly. "Are you blind? We're getting married." Hee Seong-hao finally recognized me. I'd been too done up for him to notice at first. His eyes lingered on my outfit and figure a beat too long. Lu Huijin noticed immediately and pulled me behind him, clearly annoyed. "Excuse us, we have toast to make," he said coldly. Su Ruhua couldn't stand seeing Lu Huijin treat me well. In her mind, the future big shot should have been hers. She blurted out desperately, "Lu Huijin, did you know Su Niannian went to the maternity ward with another man behind her back?" I blinked. "How do you know it was the maternity ward?" she stumbled. "I just know." I smiled. "Interesting. My unmarried older sister seems very familiar with the maternity department. Did you go there for a premarital pregnancy check?" Panic flashed across her face. Premarital pregnancy could land you a serious morality charge in this era. She pinched herself hard to snap out of it. "I'm married. I have my certificate. I'm legally married." "Oh? And was the checkup before or after the certificate?" She sneered, deflecting. "Stop changing the subject. You were with some random man." The commotion drew attention, including Wang Jun's. He recognized Su Ruhua instantly from the hospital hallway incident and appeared beside us in a flash. "Are you talking about me?" he said, stepping forward.
Suruhu pointed at Wang Yun triumphantly.
That's him. That's the man. Wang Jun stepped forward calmly. I'm the commander's personal guard. What's wrong with me accompanying sister-in-law? Su Ruhua's face went blank for a second. Then her eyes darted to my stomach. You're pregnant with Lu Huijin's baby? She'd put it all together wrong. She thought Wang Jun had escorted me to a pregnancy checkup. In her mind, that's how I'd trapped Lu Huijin. She was furious at herself for not thinking of the same trick first. If she'd used her belly to snare him instead of He Tsonghao, Lu Huijin would have taken responsibility for sure. I saw the regret, rage, and jealousy swirling in her eyes. I placed a hand on my stomach and smiled sweetly.
Why?
Are you jealous? Lu Huijin glanced at me, watching my coy performance. But something clicked in his head. During our first meeting, he'd said he wanted to wait a year after marriage before having children. Was that why I'd been pulling away from him? Did I think he didn't want to be close yet? My stepmother Su Xiaohong glared at me. Shameless. I looked at her coolly. Whoever got pregnant before marriage is the shameless one. Want to come to the hospital with me right now and get checked? We'll see who's really pregnant. The commotion drew everyone's attention, including my father's table of work leaders. One of them finally recognized both of us. Old Su, aren't those your two daughters? My father nodded stiffly. Yes, they just happened to have their weddings on the same day. Well, go break it up. It looks like they're fighting on their big day. He sat frozen. They've always been like this since they were little. It'll blow over. It didn't blow over. I slapped Su Ruhua across the face. I told you to stay away from me. And I still haven't settled the score for you setting me up with Li Chong. Her pupils shrank at that name. I leaned in close and whispered, if you want your mother-in-law to learn even more about your history, keep making a scene. She wilted instantly. I smoothed my hair, took Lu Huijin's arm, and went back to toasting our guests. Today's banquet had cost him serious money, and I wasn't about to let this woman ruin it. He somehow stole one last look at me. Dressed up in red, standing next to Su Ruhua in her own red outfit, the comparison was devastating. He was starting to wonder if he'd been blind to choose the wrong sister. He told himself that I couldn't look at him because I still had feelings for him. He glanced back one more time and locked eyes with Lu Huijin. The look he got in return was pure predator, like a hunting dog about to lunge. He somehow whipped his head back around and didn't turn again. On Su Ruhua's side, He Tsonghao's mother had been watching the whole spectacle. She kept drinking cup after cup, getting angrier by the minute. By the time Su Ruhua came to toast the main table, the woman's face was already flushed red. She looked at this daughter-in-law leaning against her son, slammed her wine glass down on the table and announced, "This daughter-in-law, I don't approve." He Tsonghao's mother had been holding in her anger for weeks, and the alcohol finally blew the lid off. She ranted at the entire table about how Su Ruhua had forced her way into the family, demanded an expensive venue, asked for bride prices and new clothes, all while having trapped her son with a pregnancy. "My son could have picked anyone better," she shouted. Su Ruhua tugged He Tsonghao's sleeve, begging him to intervene. But he was still dazed from staring at me earlier and didn't react. That stung her more than anything his mother said. My stepmother Su Xiaohong finally couldn't take it anymore. Whatever her feelings about Su Ruhua lately, having her face slapped publicly meant her face was being slapped too. She marched over to the He family's table and fired back. "Every pot has its lid. My daughter may not be perfect, but your son picked her, didn't he?" Yell at him, not her. The two families nearly erupted into a full brawl before He Tsonghao's mother sobered up enough to realize that saying too much would destroy her son's career too. Both sides retreated to their tables and ate in painful silence. Guests couldn't finish fast enough and started leaving early. It was the most miserable wedding banquet anyone had ever attended. Meanwhile, our side was warm and happy. Lu Huijin's grandfather finally met me and handed over a big red envelope, saying he'd loved the apples I'd sent. His grandmother patted my hand and said she remembered me as a tiny child visiting their home. "You've grown into a beautiful young woman. If Huijin ever bullies you, tell Grandma." I smiled and nodded. After the banquet, Su Ruhua walked into her new home at the He residence, 60 square meters, 2 bedrooms, 1 living room. Aside from a single, double happiness character on the door, there was nothing festive about the place. No friends came to celebrate. She sat on the bed, peeling off her red dress, and couldn't help comparing this to the life she'd had with Lee Chong in the original story. He'd been violent, but his family was wealthy, the house was big, and there was meat every day. She told herself to hold on. In the future, Hee Sung-hao would become rich and treat his wife well. That was the only thought keeping her going. Our wedding party drove back to the Liu family home. Liu Huijin's sister Leking helped me out of the car and took me upstairs to the bridal suite while Liu Huijin stayed downstairs chatting with his friend Han Lin. Han Lin studied Liu Huijin's face over a cup of water. Did you really marry her just because of the childhood arrangement? Liu Huijin shot him a look. I married her. She's my wife. Don't say anything stupid. If she hears it, I won't forgive you. The truth was, when his grandfather had dragged him to that first meeting, he could have refused. He'd had plenty of excuses ready. But then he saw my eyes, and something made him just go with it. He squeezed his fist, privately admitting to himself that he was, in fact, the kind of man who falls for a pretty face.
Han Lin grinned.
First time I've ever seen you protect a woman like this. You've really fallen hard. Worry about yourself. You're only 2 years younger than me and still single. Don't tell me your mother isn't panicking. Hey, no personal attacks. It's not my fault I don't have a childhood fiancé lined up, Leking pulled me excitedly into the bridal suite. The room was a sea of red bedding, cups printed with double happiness, characters, a matching thermos and dates, peanuts, dried longan and lotus seeds arranged on the bed, symbols for have children early. Colorful ribbons hung on the walls. She'd clearly put her heart into it. I told her I loved it. She saluted me playfully. My brother's orders, personally executed by me. Soon Liu Huijin's friends arrived on their bicycles. We stood together before the wall portrait and read the vows. Liu Huijin and Su Niannian, on September 23, 1974, voluntarily become revolutionary companions. When we finished, I looked at the little red flower pinned to his chest and smiled. I was grateful he hadn't held yesterday's awkwardness against me, and grateful for the home he'd built around me. He stared into my eyes like he might drown in them. Then Han Lin pulled out an apple on a string, the classic wedding game, where both people try to bite it at the same time. Liu Huijin glanced at me to check if I was okay with it. I nodded. We leaned in together, getting closer and closer to the apple, and just as we were about to bite, Han Lin yanked it up. Our lips crashed together. I froze. Weren't we supposed to eat an apple? His lips were cool against mine. Then he gently sucked and his tongue brushed against mine, a new technique he'd apparently just discovered. My face turned as red as the apple. I couldn't decide whether to push him away. His friends were all watching, but he tilted his head to block their view. All they could see was the back of his head. Neither of us stopped. He wasn't going to quit if I didn't say stop, and I didn't say stop. By the time he pulled me into his chest to hide my flushed face, we'd been kissing for quite a while. His friends wolf whistled and someone shouted, "Time for the wedding night," before they all mercifully left. Even after everyone was gone, he didn't let go of my hand. His voice was softer than usual. Tired, I nodded. He told me to go upstairs and rest. Up in the bedroom, I found my things had already been moved in, and there was a brand new vanity table, clearly bought just for me. Then Liu Huijin came up carrying a bowl of noodles. "Want to eat? You barely had anything all day." I was touched. I hadn't expected this tough military man to notice something like that. The noodles actually tasted decent. He said he'd learned basic cooking in the army. When I asked if he'd eaten, he said no, there was more in the pot downstairs, and he'd eat after I finished so he could take my bowl down and wash up. I started shoveling noodles into my mouth like a squirrel stuffing its cheeks. He told me to slow down. I said, "I can't make you wait too long. Next time, let's eat together." He took the dishes downstairs, and I finally freed myself from the beautiful but skull-crushing headpiece. I washed my face, cleaned my hair, and changed into comfortable pajamas. Then came a knock on the door. "Can I come in?" I was drying my hair when Liu Huijin knocked. I told him to come in. He walked in and immediately noticed my loose silk nightgown, the water droplets on my collar, my damp curls. I could feel his gaze linger before he pulled it away. He sat down and handed me a bank book. This is all my savings. It's yours now. I opened it eagerly and counted the digits. 8,000 yuan. In this era, that was almost unheard of. But then it hit me. Every yuan represented a wound, a battle, a brush with death. How could I take his blood money? I pushed it back. I have enough for now. Just give me a monthly allowance. Keep this yourself. Something shifted in his expression. He looked me straight in the eyes and said, I didn't marry you to be husband and wife in name only. You understand that, right? My body went stiff. I understood perfectly. I gripped my towel until my knuckles turned white and nodded, my voice trembling slightly. I understand. The man in the novel was supposed to be cold and emotionless. But every kiss, every word, it all felt real. He wasn't pretending. He noticed my tension and softened. Don't be scared. We'll take it slow. Dry your hair and rest. Then he walked out. I fell asleep within minutes. When I woke up, Lekin was at the door calling me for dinner. I threw on a jacket and went downstairs. Lu Huijin had apparently gone out to exercise after I fell asleep, come back drenched in sweat, and cooked dinner. I asked if his wounds could handle a shower. He said they'd healed enough. He'd already showered yesterday before the wedding. At the table, Lekin whispered, How did you crack my brother's ice wall? So many girls in the compound liked him growing up, and he ignored every single one. I said quietly, probably because of our childhood arrangement. She shook her head firmly. My brother isn't the type to marry someone just out of duty. He obviously likes you. After today's kissing display, she was certain. My face heated up. When Lu Huijin went to shower, I suddenly remembered. I'd left my pink undergarment hanging in the bathroom after washing it earlier. He definitely saw it. I buried my face in my rice bowl. He came down with damp hair, and Lekin complained he took forever. I thought to myself that MY showers take at least 30 minutes, so he was actually fast. We agreed to visit his grandparents tomorrow, and then go out together. Lekin cheered. That night, I lay in bed pretending to read a book, heart racing. This was my wedding night. There was only one bed, covered in that big red quilt. I heard his footsteps coming up the stairs, getting closer and closer. I frantically flipped a page. His voice came through the darkness. It's dark. Stop reading. I looked up. If I wasn't supposed to read, then what exactly was I supposed to do? He'd just said we'd take things slow. So, what was about to happen? And if something did happen, would I resist? I mean, looking at him, it's not like I'd be losing out. Before my brain could spiral further, he tossed me a red envelope. Count it. Oh, it was the wedding gift money. I immediately dumped everything out and started sorting cash, grain tickets, sugar coupons, fabric tickets, organizing them into neat piles with rubber bands. The joy of counting money completely erased the awkwardness of being alone with a man on my wedding night. Lu Huijin watched me count with an amused expression. I could practically hear him thinking, she won't take my 8,000 yuan savings, but this makes her happy? Then I remembered where I was. Wedding night. Big red bed. Just us. I swallowed nervously. He stood up. According to Han Lin's advice, give her what she likes. He apparently decided what I liked was him. He started unbuttoning the white shirt I'd bought him, one button at a time. The shirt fell away, revealing those perfectly proportioned abs I'd been admiring in the hospital. Not gym bro overdone, not too lean, the Goldilocks of abdominal muscles. I swallowed again. Loudly. He caught me staring. I blurted out the dumbest thing possible. Is the shirt I picked comfortable? I wanted to bite my own tongue off. Comfortable, he said in that low voice. More rustling. Clothes hitting the floor. I squeezed my eyes shut, but I could track exactly which stage of undressing he'd reached just by sound. His footsteps came closer. I opened my eyes. He looked down at me with a teasing half-smile. You just saw everything. Aren't you going to take responsibility? Me take responsibility? Who is the pervert here? He kissed the corner of my mouth, quick and light, then whispered, Good night. My face had been red for so long I was worried it might be permanent. He told me not to look at him like that, clenching his fists. Don't look at me that way, he said through gritted teeth. I glanced down one more time. Pure reflex, I swear. Then shut my eyes. Let's just sleep. He pulled out an old quilt and started making a bed on the floor. I opened one eye. You're not sleeping up here, without turning around. Do you want me to? That's not what I meant. I was just asking. He lay down on the cold cement floor. I stared at the ceiling, unable to sleep. He was recovering from serious injuries and sleeping on concrete. On his wedding night. Because of me. I tossed and turned. The bed creaked with every movement. Can't sleep? He asked from the floor. I gathered every scrap of courage I had. Maybe you should. Come up here? The floor is cold. I don't want you getting sick again. Silence. Are you serious? I nodded in the dark, then remembered he couldn't see me. I'm worried about your health. A rush of movement. He vaulted onto the bed in one fluid motion. But he misjudged the distance. I'd shifted to the middle of the bed while tossing around, and his hand landed directly on something very soft. Through my thin nightgown, which was apparently not covering much. His body weight came down on top of me for one electric second before he launched himself sideways like he'd touched a hot stove. That was an accident. My face could have lit up the room. I know, I whispered. I rolled to face the wall. He lay rigid on his side. Neither of us moved. First time sharing a bed with a man in 2 lifetimes. His lingering warmth, his sense surrounding me on sheets he'd slept on for years. And the phantom sensation of his hand was not going away. Lu Huijin lay in the darkness, replaying his spectacular failure. He'd wanted to make a good impression on his wedding night. Instead, he'd accidentally groped his wife within 3 seconds of getting into bed. Lu Huijin slipped under the red wedding quilt. Starting with sharing a bed seemed reasonable enough. I lay there stiff as a board, breathing deeply until my face cooled down. When his breathing steadied, I secretly turned to peek at him in the moonlight. I could make out his tall, broad silhouette, but not much else. He caught me. Again. Can't sleep? Want me to turn on the light? Twice in one night. I yanked the blanket over my head. I'm sleeping right now. No need. He reached over, pulled the blanket down to my neck, and tucked me in. His hand grazed my skin, and I felt him tense. He kissed my forehead softly. Sleep. I started counting sheep. Somewhere around who knows how many, I finally drifted off. The problem? I have terrible sleeping habits. I normally hug a body pillow and throw my leg over it. Tonight there was no pillow, just Lu Huijin. He lay there in the dark with me burrowed into his chest, my soft parts pressing against his arm, smelling like whatever lotion I'd put on. He was screaming internally. His own wife, wrapped around him, and he couldn't do a thing about it. He stared at the ceiling, praying for morning. I woke up clinging to him like an octopus. My hand was on his abs. I'd pulled his tank top up in my sleep. My leg was draped across. A very alert part of him. Morning biology had made things even more obvious. I panicked and tried to pull my leg away, accidentally kicking the sensitive area. He hissed, and his eyes flew open. Meanwhile, my nightgown had shifted completely, one shoulder exposed, red undergarment visible, the whole situation thoroughly compromising. He stared for a long second. Time to get up, he said calmly. I smiled awkwardly, grateful that a man who'd just been kicked there wasn't holding a grudge. Downstairs, Leking had already started breakfast. She waved us over cheerfully. I helped her finish cooking. She laughed when I instinctively grabbed the biggest bowl for Lu Huijin's porridge without being told. Then she looked between us at the table and paused. Her brother looked haggard and drained. I looked fresh and glowing. She frowned with concern. Brother, are you okay? Your face looks rough. Was the wedding too tiring? Is your body not up to it? Lu Huijin's chopsticks froze. His face darkened. He was not up to it. He was suffering because he was too up to it. That was the entire problem. Maybe we shouldn't go out today, he said flatly. Leking pouted. She had to go back to school tomorrow. He suggested skipping her outing but mentioned taking me ice skating instead. Her eyes lit up. I hesitated. But I don't know how to skate. Leking jumped in. Don't worry, my brother's skating is top level. I looked at Lu Huijin with concern. Is your body really up for it? What if you fall and reopen your old wounds? The man who'd just been asked, is your body up to it, for the second time in 5 minutes kept a remarkably straight face. Are you up to it? Hearing that question twice in 5 minutes finally broke Lu Huijin. He leaned close to my ear and whispered, after this morning, you still need to ask. The memory of that hit my brain like a bomb. I nodded frantically and dropped the subject. He wanted to go ice skating to build our relationship. If I couldn't skate, he'd have an excuse to hold me. But first, we visited his grandparents. Grandma opened the door and immediately scolded us for coming so early at 9 o'clock. Leking protested. You used to make us get up at 6. Now that sister-in-law is here. 9 is too early. Grandma smacked her hand. In Grandma's mind, after a wedding night with Lu Huijin's build, I obviously needed extra sleep. She couldn't exactly explain that logic to an unmarried girl. I gave Grandma the meat sauce jars and Grandpa some tea leaves for my space. Grandpa brewed a pot right away, took one sip, and gave a big thumbs up. He said he felt more alert and energized after drinking it. The spirit spring water infused in those leaves was doing its job. As we were leaving, Grandma pulled me aside privately. Niannian, I know you're newlyweds, but you can't let the man have his way too much. Your body looks fragile. You might get pregnant within a month or two, and then you really can't handle that kind of activity. She'd noticed Lu Huijin's dark circles and assumed he'd been working hard all night. I stood there digging my nails into my palms. Could I tell her that absolutely nothing happened? That her grandson's exhaustion came from lying perfectly still while I clung to him like an octopus all night? I understand, Grandma, I mumbled, staring at the floor. Meanwhile, at the He household, Su Ruhua's wedding night went differently. He Tsonghao looked at his new wife lying next to him and felt nothing. After the humiliation at the wedding banquet, all desire had evaporated. He kept thinking about his mother's warning that he'd regret this marriage. Turns out she was right. He rolled over, facing away. But Su Ruhua was desperate. Her belly was still empty. The fake pregnancy test wouldn't fool anyone for long. She stripped naked, pressed herself against his back, and used every trick she knew until his body responded despite his brain's objections. The old bed creaked through the night, while He Tsonghao's mother cursed through the thin walls next door. At 6 the next morning, his mother was banging on their door.
Su Ruhu.
Get up and cook. Everyone has work. Su Ruhua shook He Tsonghao. Your mom is yelling at me. He yawned without opening his eyes. So? Go cook. What kind of new bride sleeps in on her first day? But I'm carrying your baby. Just make one meal. Go. She dragged herself up, threw on clothes, and shuffled to the kitchen where her mother-in-law stood over her shoulder criticizing every move. Su Ruhua's only thought as the woman droned on. Not listening, turtle chanting sutras. She told herself that once He Tsonghao got rich, she'd move out and hire 5 maids to wait on her hand and foot. Over at the He household, Su Ruhua's morning was miserable. Her mother-in-law rattled off a list of duties. She was the only one not working, so she'd cook all meals, make porridge every morning, not noodles, do everyone's laundry, and oh yes, stop clinging to the man at night since she was already pregnant. Su Ruhua nearly rolled her eyes. She wondered if this was how I'd lived in the original story. This woman was controlling her even in the bedroom. When she served breakfast, He Tsonghao complained the porridge was too watery. She snapped that his mother had measured the rice. He slammed his chopsticks down. She's your mother too. Su Ruhua shot back. Nobody gave me money for changing what I call her. His mother exploded. Su Ruhua stood up and threatened to leave. He Tsonghao called her bluff. Go then. You've been nothing but trouble since the wedding. She was stunned. Last night he'd been all over her, and now this? In the original story, he'd treated me well no matter what I did. Why was it different with her? She couldn't figure it out. She retreated to the bedroom, defeated. He told her to fix things with his mother, then left for work. She gripped the bedsheets and swore that once he got rich, she'd make everyone pay. Meanwhile, the 3 of us, Lu Huijin, Leking, and I, had lunch at the state restaurant and headed to the skating rink. It wasn't winter, so this was roller skating on a smooth indoor floor, the only rink in the whole capital. Lu Huijin came back with rental skates and handed me the right size. I was surprised he knew my shoe size. "We bought shoes together last time, remember?" he said. Then he knelt down, loosened my laces properly, slid my foot in, and tied everything up with practiced efficiency. Licheng's jaw dropped. Her brother had mild germophobia and was touching someone's feet. My face went warm. His big palm cradled my foot, and I felt tingling from his touch. Standing up in wheeled boots was a completely different experience. I wobbled to the rink, clutching the railing. The moment I hit the smooth surface, my legs went one way and my body went the other. I was about to fall backward when Lu Huijin's arm wrapped around my waist from behind, his solid chest steadying me completely. My heart felt calm. My heartbeat, however, was racing.
Slow down.
"Feel your center of gravity first," he said in that steady voice. I watched little kids gliding effortlessly around me and felt like an absolute beginner. But with my dance background and his patient coaching, I picked it up faster than expected. Before long, I could glide forward holding the railing loosely. He took my hand away from the railing. "Try going faster." "No way, I just learned. I'm here. I won't let you fall." I trusted a soldier's word. I let go and pushed toward the center of the rink. Lu Huijin was impressed by how quickly I was learning. But just as I was getting confident, a little kid came zooming straight at me. I panicked, looking for somewhere to dodge. I lost my balance and started sliding sideways. Lu Huijin grabbed me, spun us around twice to kill the momentum, and pinned me against the railing. One arm around my waist, one hand on the rail. I was sandwiched between him and the barrier, completely unable to move. His body heat soaked through our thin clothes. My waist burned where his hand held me. We stared at each other. I could tell he wanted to kiss me. His arm tightened around me. A skating coach chased the kid away and gave us a look as he passed. Couple sneaking dates at the rink wasn't unusual, but we were being pretty obvious about it. I heard children's voices and snapped out of it, trying to pull away. My cheek accidentally brushed across his lips. He touched his mouth afterward, looking like a man being slowly tortured to death. I was about to ask him something, maybe about what Leking had said, about whether he actually liked me, when a squad of people wearing red armbands marched toward us. "What do you think you're doing?" the lead woman shouted. They were the neighborhood morality patrol. The woman declared we were setting a terrible example with our inappropriate public behavior and ordered us to come with them. We hadn't even kissed. All he did was catch me from falling. Lu Huijin stepped in front of me, his voice dropping to commander-level authority. "I'm Lu Huijin, commander of the 59th Regiment, Northern Border. I was teaching my wife to skate." "Is that a problem?" The woman hesitated but pushed back. Plenty of people lied about their identity. Lu Huijin pulled out his military ID. "If you still don't believe me, I'll have to assume you're deliberately harassing military personnel and their families." Lekin came sliding over, shouting, "That's my brother. That's my sister-in-law." The woman's confidence crumbled. She muttered, "Don't do it again," and retreated with her squad. The mood was ruined, so we headed for the exit. When Lu Huijin reached for my hand, I pushed it away. "Stop being a pervert. You started it." "How? The way you look at me, that's harassment. I had no comeback for that." Outside, he suggested a movie. But I just remembered something important. My grandfather had given me an address where my eldest uncle had hidden family belongings before everything fell apart. Lu Huijin was leaving for the military base tomorrow, and who knew when I'd get another chance. I told him I wanted to visit an old friend. He clearly didn't buy it, but didn't press. He just reminded me to be home for dinner, to come back before dark, and that we were heading to the base tomorrow. Leking rolled her eyes at how fussy her brother had become. I took a bus and walked for 15 minutes to the address. It was a traditional courtyard house, a decent-sized compound with 2 courtyards. But it wasn't empty anymore. Different families had moved in and were living there now. I stood outside, carefully observing the layout. The courtyard gate was wide open since so many families lived there now. The property had clearly been seized. It was a workday, so only old people and children were around. I looked for the big tree my grandfather mentioned, but couldn't find it. Too many clotheslines and changes had been made over the years. I'd have to use my wrist's heat-sensing ability instead. An old lady spotted me. "Who are you looking for, dear?" I wiped my eye for effect and told her I was searching for my uncle who'd run away from home years ago. My grandmother was dying, and a neighbor said they'd seen him here. The old lady softened immediately and told me to look around. I walked half the courtyard until I reached a hidden spot near the boundary between two courtyards. My wrists started heating up. The area was secluded, just a plain patch of dirt. I spread a floral cloth over it, then tried something new, pulling the buried items directly into my space without digging. "Don't absorb these, okay? I haven't even looked at them yet," I told my space. I reached under the cloth, concentrated, and 2 boxes appeared in my dimension. At the same time, the ground collapsed into a deep hole. I quickly tossed in some broken furniture from my space, covered it with grass and dirt, patted everything flat. The whole process took 1 minute. The old lady waved as I left. "Not waiting for your uncle?" I touched my forehead sadly. "I need to check on my grandmother." She felt bad for asking and waved me off. On the way home, I checked. Both boxes were intact in my space. It really could understand speech. I pulled out some cured sausage, king oyster mushrooms, corn, and rice to make clay pot rice for dinner. I got home around 5. Lu Huijin was already in the kitchen stewing chicken. When he saw me come back smiling, his fingers curled. Then he leaned in and subtly sniffed me.
No unfamiliar scents.
His mouth curved up. He tried to take over cooking, but I walked straight past him to the sink. Let him try my cooking tonight. You do your dishes, I'll make clay pot rice." He was surprised I knew how to make it. He'd only had it once in the South. I told him I'd seen it in books but never actually tried, so no laughing if it flopped. I soaked the rice, diced the mushrooms, sliced the sausage, and fried everything until fragrant before layering it over the rice. While I worked, Lu Huijin tucked a stray curl behind my ear. His fingers lingered near my earlobe. The way he watched me, like everything I did was art, made my ears turn red. I started nervously, wiping the counter with a rag. He took it from my hand. "I already cleaned that." Then he asked if I needed to buy anything before we left tomorrow. I said no. Silence filled the kitchen. I turned to leave, and he caught my wrist, pulled me close, one arm around my waist. "I've been wanting to do something all day," he said. I looked up at him. "What?" He lifted my chin. "I told you not to look at me like that." His lips moved closer. I squirmed. Not here. The kitchen setting was giving me flashbacks to every romance movie I'd ever watched. I was so nervous I grabbed his shirt. His arms tightened. His voice went husky. "Tonight, then?" I couldn't speak. I just nodded because I noticed he was expanding again. He took a deep breath, forced himself to let go, and stepped back. Half an hour later, the clay pot rice was done, fragrant, with a perfect golden crust on the bottom. Lekin came running downstairs. "You're back. I told my brother to call me when you got home." "Why didn't he?" I shot Lu Huijin a look. Definitely on purpose. But Lekin forgot her complaint the moment she saw the food. "What?" I asked that. "It smells amazing." I shooed her to wash her hands and started dishing out the rice while Lu Huijin brought out his chicken. Dinner was served. Lekin was too busy devouring her clay pot rice to notice the awkward tension between us. After dinner, I went upstairs and brought down the gifts I'd bought for her: snow cream, fruit, meat sauce, and a dress. She teared up immediately.
"You're
even better than my brother." I realized this girl might seem carefree, but with her parents away and her brother constantly deployed, she was probably starved for affection. That could explain why, in the novel, she'd been tricked after starting college. I sat her down and gave her some life advice about love. I told her that a man who truly cares shows it through actions, not pretty words. She should watch what he does for her, not just listen to what he says. And if someone won't take no for an answer, run. She frowned. "Isn't that too materialistic? Books say love should be pure and beautiful." I paused. This era really was different. I softened my approach and told her to focus on studying for now. Better education meant meeting better people. Before leaving her room, I remembered something more urgent. Human traffickers were rampant in this era. What if that's what happened to her? I pulled out a bottle of pepper spray I'd made. If anyone threatens you, spray this in their eyes. Don't walk alone after dark. And if a helpless stranger, pregnant woman, child, asks you to go somewhere with them, take them to the police station instead. Her eyes went wide. Then she remembered something. The police had actually delivered a commendation certificate to the house for when I'd rescued that girl on the street. She dug it out of a drawer and handed it to me. The pepper spray warning suddenly felt very real to her. Back in my room, Lu Huijin was stepping out of the bathroom with wet hair, water droplets rolling down his neck, his damp tank top clinging to every muscle. "Go wash up," he said casually. All I could think about was the kitchen scene from this afternoon. Wash up suddenly sounded loaded. But tomorrow we were leaving for the military base, so I grabbed my clothes and went in. I soaked in the bath for an absurdly long time, scrubbing my already red arms, stalling. Outside, Lu Huijin finished packing, his hair dried completely, and he started doing push-ups on the floor to burn off energy. When I finally came out in my pajamas, he was mid-push-up and looked up at me from the ground. I sat on the bed, drying my hair. He jumped up and sat next to me. My heart started racing. Was he going to pin me down and kiss me? He said, "I packed what I could." "I didn't touch your things. You should pack too." "Oh, just packing." I scrambled to stuff my belongings into my bag. When I bent over, I caught him averting his eyes from my loose collar. Then he pulled out a small radio from his bag. "A gift for you." I turned it over my hands. It was compact and clearly expensive. He said life at the military base might be boring, and I could listen to broadcasts to pass the time. I was touched that this straightforward military man had thought of something so thoughtful. I scooted close to him. "I don't know how to use it. Teach me." Fresh from the bath, I was apparently radiating scented warmth directly onto his neck. His fingers curled tight as he showed me the buttons: on, off, volume, tuning. When the radio crackled to life with a broadcast, I grabbed his arm in excitement. For someone from the future, a radio was nothing special. But here, in this world, it was my only window to the outside, proof that time was moving forward, that I wasn't completely cut off from everything. It meant more than he could know. The radio was still crackling with static when Lu Huijin finally gave in to what he'd been holding back all afternoon. He pulled me into his arms. My fingers went white around the radio. We'd hugged before, but always outside. This was different. Our bedroom, thin pajamas, a wedding bed. He took the radio from my hand, set it on the nightstand, laced his fingers through mine, and kissed me. This time he actually knew what he was doing. Apparently he'd been secretly studying that guidebook Hanlin had given him. The kiss was proper, deep, and made my whole body go soft. He pressed me closer. When he finally pulled back, his voice was hoarse. "What were you going to ask me this afternoon?" Leaning against his chest, feeling his heartbeat, I finally asked the question that had been eating at me. "Did you marry me because of the childhood arrangement, or because you actually like me?" He pulled me tighter. "Can't you feel whether I like you or not?" I could literally feel his reaction pressing against me. I pushed at him. "That's not what I mean." He straightened up. "I'll admit, the first time I saw you was because of the arrangement. But I married you because I like you." He tucked my hair behind my ear, stared at my earlobe, and kissed it. I hadn't expected that. A small sound escaped me, and my arms tightened around his waist. I didn't realize what that did to a man barely holding himself together. His kisses moved to my lips. Then he wasn't satisfied with just that. He lowered me onto the bed, bracing himself above me so his weight didn't crush me. His lips traced from my forehead down my nose, my lips, my chin, my neck. I clung to his neck. I wanted to tell him to stop, but every time I opened my mouth, only soft sounds came out. He was losing control too. He froze. I opened my eyes, confused. He covered them with his hand. "Don't look at me like that. I won't be able to stop." He stared down at me, flushed, lips swollen, hair wild across the pillow, collar pulled open with marks he'd left. He took several deep breaths. He said military endurance training had never been this hard. I started feeling cold. He pulled the blanket over us both and pressed his fingers firmly against my wrist, as if that could somehow channel away his desire. He knew tonight wasn't the right time, We were traveling tomorrow. My body was too delicate, and pushing things right after confessing his feelings wouldn't be respectful. He kissed my forehead gently and turned off the light. Let's sleep. He moved to his side of the bed, putting distance between us. But in the darkness, I couldn't help inching closer. His steady breathing hitched. I reached out and rested my hand on his chest. I just wanted to know what it felt like to fall asleep touching his abs. He caught my hand immediately. In the dark, our fingers intertwined. Nothing more was said. Nothing more needed to be. My heart had been racing so many times today that I was grateful to be young. Otherwise, I'd need a hospital. His scent was everywhere. Even the blanket smelled like him after just one night. Invasive, that's what he was. This was our second night together. Eventually, I slept. Morning came, and, of course, I woke up wrapped around him again. Same octopus position. Same crime scene. This time I tried to fake sleep my way out of it, but he was already watching me with open eyes. I smiled awkwardly. I didn't do it on purpose. He squeezed my calf and sat up. Even if you did, that's fine. You can do whatever you want. My face burned. I don't want to do anything. I launched off the bed and locked myself in the bathroom. He called after me. Take your time. I sped up. No way was he squeezing in here with me. Brushing my teeth, I looked in the mirror and froze. Several red marks decorated my neck. No mystery about who left those. I glared through the door at the man calmly getting dressed outside. When I came out, I dabbed snow cream on my neck. Useless. The marks weren't going anywhere. Thank God for silk scarves. I dug one out of my bag and tied it on. I picked a pink silk scarf to cover the marks on my neck, paired with a yellow blouse and loose pants for the train ride. When Lu Huijin saw me tying the scarf, he rubbed his nose guiltily. He'd gotten a bit carried away last night. I remembered Leking would be alone here and offered to give her my stun stick since I'd be safe at the military base. Lu Huijin admitted he'd overlooked his sister's safety and promised to make me a new one. I also gave her some brain-boosting tea for her studies. Downstairs, Leking had already made breakfast. When she called me to fetch Lu Huijin, I walked in on him mid-change. I caught a full view of, well, everything that the underwear was struggling to contain. After last night, I already knew the shape intimately. I pinched my palm hard and said flatly, breakfast is ready. I gave Leking the stun stick and taught her how to use it. She was impressed, assuming her brother had made it. Typical, gets a wife, forgets his sister. But you're the best sister-in-law. I was worried because of what happens to her in the novel. I wanted her protected. A car from Commander Lu's grandfather arrived to take us. We dropped Leking at school, then headed to the train station. I suddenly realized Wang Jun had vanished after the wedding. Lu Huijin said he'd gone back to base. No reason to stick around once his commander was fine. We had hard sleeper tickets this time, much better than hard seats. I got the middle bunk, he got the bottom. Lu Huijin insisted I sleep in the middle at night for safety, but sit on his lower bunk during the day. Made sense. A soldier's vigilance beat mine any day. I pulled out a lunchbox of dates from my space. Perfectly round, plump, and bursting with sweet juice. I popped one into Lu Huijin's mouth. He glanced around nervously. Nobody was watching since the train hadn't left yet. Sweet, he said. But don't feed me on the train. People might see. I bit my dates extra loudly, imagining they were his head. He was worried about public appearances? The man who tried to embrace me at the skating rink in front of the morality patrol? He reached for another date. I smacked his hand. We're in public. Don't eat my dates. He grabbed one anyway, but instead of eating it, he popped it into my mouth. Then he held his palm in front of my face. I stared at him, mouth full. What? Spit. The pit. He noticed I'd been swallowing all the sharp pits and was worried one would get stuck in my throat once the train started moving. I fished out some brown paper, folded it into a little triangle, and spat the pit into that instead. Then I looked at the pile of date pits, and my eyes lit up. Can you plant date trees where we're going? He said military wives got small garden plots for vegetables. Trees were unusual, but we could plant some at home. I pointed at the pits excitedly. I want to plant these. Just 2 trees. Dates are great for health and cooking, so I wanted to grow my own. Lu Huijin pointed out that growing a tree from a pit would take years. By then we might have moved. He offered to find me an actual tree instead. I mumbled that my dates were special and delicious, then secretly thought about grafting techniques from the future. I could always snip a branch from my space later. I handed him the date box and pulled out spicy rabbit heads I'd made earlier, Sichuan style, drenched in red chili oil, the bones so tender they fell apart. Meanwhile, the family across from us had settled in, a woman with 2 daughters and a son. The little boy spotted Lu Huijin's dates and started drooling. His mother noticed and pinched the older girl. "Dia, can't you see your brother's drooling? Wipe his hands. What's the point of raising you?" The girl silently pulled out a towel and cleaned him up, clearly used to this treatment. Then the boy started wailing. "Mama, I want dates. Big dates." Lu Huijin looked at me. They were my dates, so it was my call. The crying was drilling into my skull, so I took out 3 and told the boy, "If I give you these, will you stop crying?" His mother pinched him to behave. He sniffled and promised. I handed the 3 dates to the older girl. "One for each of you kids." She quietly thanked me. The second sister snatched hers and bit it immediately, then elbowed Dia. "Eat yours fast before Taidan takes it." Dia glanced at her mother, who wasn't watching, and took a tiny bite. Sure enough, the boy inhaled his and grabbed Dia's right out of her hand. I frowned but stayed quiet. At least he'd stopped screaming. The mother started chatting with me. Turns out she was also a military wife heading to the same base, North City. Her husband was Vice Commander Wang Qianjin. Lu Huijin confirmed he knew the man. She was thrilled and relieved. This was her first long trip, and she'd been terrified of missing her stop. Lu Huijin promised to wake her when we arrived. The food cart came through selling box meals, 150 and 250 each. Lu Huijin asked what the difference was. The expensive one had braised pork, shredded potatoes, and stir-fried pork. The cheap one had potato stew, egg with peppers, and fried beans. He bought one of each and handed me the braised pork box.
Eat first.
"Give me whatever's left." "Wait, you want to eat my leftovers? We've kissed plenty." Leftovers or nothing. My chopsticks tightened. Honestly, if the situation were reversed, I'd probably be grossed out eating his leftovers. But he genuinely didn't care. I opened the box, 6 or 7 chunks of proper braised pork, tender and well-seasoned. Train food was expensive, but surprisingly honest in this era. Across from us, Taidan sniffed the air longingly, but didn't dare ask for more. His mother pulled out a homemade flatbread. "Eat this, Taidan. When we see your father, we'll have a real meal." Taidan gnawed his flatbread while sniffing the meat smell from our side. His sisters only had plain steamed buns, not even the good kind, just mixed flour ones. I ate 2 pieces of braised pork and couldn't finish the rest. Wang Shuping stared at me like I was crazy for not wanting meat. She looked me up and down, my soft skin, my slim figure, and then asked, out of nowhere, "So when are you 2 having baby?" I was mid-sip from Lu Huijin's military canteen and choked so hard the water got stuck in my throat. 2 sentences into our acquaintance, and she was already asking about reproduction. It immediately brought back memories of last night. My face turned red from coughing. Lu Huijin tossed his food down and came to pat my back. After I recovered, I had 0 interest in continuing that conversation. Lu Huijin polished off both lunch boxes in record time and went to throw away the trash, telling me to rest since we'd be on the train for 2 or 3 more days. I lay down and immediately saw the old man in the middle bunk across from me with his stinky bare feet propped on the pillow. I nearly gagged. Who knows how many people had used these sheets? I pulled out my own clean bedding from under the bunk and wrapped everything up tight before lying down. Wang Shuping was stunned again. The fabric was clearly expensive. In her mind, it should have been made into clothes, not wasted as sheets. She sized me up and concluded I was a spoiled princess. She also decided I was stingy for only giving 3 dates earlier. I felt her staring and opened my eyes. She asked about my beautiful fabric. I was lying on a swaying train feeling queasy, and I knew if this conversation continued, she'd be asking how many times Lu Huijin and I went at it on our wedding night. So I rolled over and pretended to be asleep. She was offended. Back in her village, Nobody dared give her attitude. Her husband was a vice commander. She figured Lu Huijin must be lower ranked since he looked so young, so in her mind, I had no right to be rude to her. When Lu Huijin came back, she tried tattling. Your wife's hearing seems bad. I talked to her, and she didn't respond. The older daughter Dia spoke up quietly. Mom, the sister is sleeping. Let it go. Lu Huijin glanced at me. He could tell I was faking, smoothed my hair, and said flatly, she's asleep. I smiled into the wall. Wang Shuping had actually been hoping to swap bunks, since her 3 kids were squeezed into one lower and one upper berth, and upper bunks were dangerous for children. But things were too awkward now for asking favors. She blamed me, the spoiled girl, for ruining her plan. I'd been pretending to sleep, but the train's rocking actually knocked me out. When I woke up, Lu Huijin was still sitting against the wall, his big frame crammed into the corner, fast asleep. I sat up and drank some water. He stirred immediately. I told him to lie down properly. He refused and went to refill my hot water instead. Wang Shuping's voice piped up again. Your husband is so good to you. I glanced over. She was beaming. Can't hit a smiling face, and we'd be living in the same military district, so I played nice. He's just a good person. Maybe it's a soldier thing. Her smile froze. Her own husband wasn't like that at all. She waited on him. Was I rubbing it in on purpose? But she needed that bunk swap, so she kept chatting warmly. I smiled back, internally screaming. This woman's enthusiasm was scorching. When Lu Huijin returned, I was finally rescued from the conversation. For dinner, I just pulled out 2 plums from my bag and shared one with Lu Huijin. My appetite was still gone from the train's constant swaying.